Jacob,
Hello.
you don't
What?
have to give a fucking 10-second long countdown. You can just make it 3 or 4 seconds.
I started the podcast. I said hello, and that was gonna be the beginning of the pod. I wasn't gonna do a countdown at all. Actually,
Start
fuck it.
from
We're rolling
30.
right now. We're rolling right now. This is the
The
Scorpion
pod,
Podcast,
the
Okay.
podcast
After
introduction.
Hours episode. Welcome everybody. It
Yeah.
has been a while since we actually had the opportunity to like talk by
Why is there a fucking
ourselves.
whiteboard
Yeah,
up?
why are we seeing this whiteboard? What the
Hey,
fuck?
I didn't start a whiteboard. It's been a
Bro,
while since we actually had the opportunity to talk amongst ourselves and sort of discuss the
what
stuff
is
that's been
this,
happening
bro?
around the show. And we figured this would be a good opportunity to do so. So yeah, please, please turn off the what? No. This is
Bro, who turned this
horrible.
on? What the fuck is this? Oh, bro, what are you drawing? Is that, are we about to get banned? Oh,
Imagine he imagine he joins back and he's just like, hey, I forgot to tell you guys something.
Sorry.
amazing.
This is still recording. I don't know what to say or do.
Yeah, the Sistine Chapel was just completed. No, I think that was a perfect introduction to the podcast, to be honest.
Start the recording because we fucked it up already.
No, we have to keep that. We have to keep that drawing.
No, I can't even upload it.
Wait, bro, but
Okay.
can I ask you how have your views changed? I mean, how much of this is YouTube friendly? If we
Oh,
can.
well, it's mostly YouTube friendly because it mostly has to do with philosophy.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
said mostly
We can.
twice. What's the other part?
Hmm?
Like you said mostly philosophy, mostly YouTube friendly.
Oh, well, politics, but I'm
Hmm.
not gonna use any anti-YouTube language, but I'll find a way of saying what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's changed politically? What was it? I
So,
don't know you at all, so actually I don't know what you thought or what you think. So
oh,
Yeah. Damn, bro.
okay.
Here's some lore is gonna have to be
Yeah.
delivered today. Fuck, there's a
Yeah.
lot of it,
So,
bro. There's a lot.
yeah. So, back then, okay, so my whole life, I've pretty much been an atheist, and for the, entirety of that, until I was about 16, the logical conclusion I came to was essentially like nihilism or whatever. Um, and when I was about 16, there was like I just had issues like living, and I was reading a lot at the time, and I found this author called Kierkegaard, right? So I got really into Christianity, and I was very into it for a few years, and then I pretty much one day I just realized like, what the fuck am I doing? Like I don't even like epistemologically, I don't even like agree with this because he posits that you have to base your truth on like a leap of faith. And I was like, well, that's just stupid because you're if you're taking a leap of faith, um you're basically believing something without any real reason to. um and so I completely stopped doing Christianity, and so that took me away from like more Christian aspects of my political philosophy as well as my philosophy in general, which would be like
yeah.
Platonism, scholasticism, And since then, I've developed somewhat of a philosophical framework, which it might be in another author, or I just have not found them yet. But I've got influences like Schopenhauer, Wittgenstein, Karl Marx, a lot of influences. But strangely, my actual political views have gone from like where they were a year ago to um strangely more extreme. So back then I was more in for favor of like something like corporatism and self-determination. And now I've completely changed my mind into more of like a state capitalist, like Xi Jinping thought, kind of economic view, and
Yeah.
kind of the same view on culture, but very different at the same time. Like basically, I think that the that multiculturalism is like the biggest roadblock to achieving what needs to happen to you know continue the progress of history, because I've read Putnam, right? And in Putnam,
Following along.
he
Yeah.
yeah, he has this paper called E Pluribus Unum. Also, he also talks about this in Bowling Alone. In Bowling Alone, it's more like multiculturalism destroys like social cohesion and social bonds, but he in E Pluribus Unum, he extrapolates that onto economics, right? So he did a study, and multicultural unions, and like under a multicultural business, it became increasingly difficult to form labor unions. And if you look at Jeff Bezos read this paper, and now he's putting a ton of fucking money into H-1B programs and such, so that they can get people into like the Amazon factories to crush labor unions from before they even start fully organizing. So that's pretty much my view. I mean, if you look at I mean, I've also been influenced by, the Eddas and such things, um,
Mhm.
in terms of just views on culture and also on history. Like there's a view in Norse paganism that I actually find very similar to, dialectical materialism, in that, in paganism, you kind of worship your ancestors, and that's kind of part of the religion. Whereas in dialectical materialism, it's like you have a process of history which you learn from and participate in, right, by organizing politically and such. So a synthesis between those two would pretty much, well, first I have to talk about something else, which is, if you're familiar with Darwinian evolution, right? There's in like more developed schools of Darwinian evolution, there's a concept called Hamilton's law, which is, if I am like an individual, my prerogative is to spread my own genetics, right? So if I have a family member or someone who's biologically similar to me, part of the same like nationality, then it increases the likelihood of altruistic behavior, so I can get them to reproduce, and then thus spreading my genetics because we're genetically very similar, right? So
Mhm.
where was I going with this? Um, so the main prerogative of life, if you're taking it from a actually, Heidegger was actually very right about a thrownness. So
Yep.
if you
Definitely.
think about life in this way, your life has no like intentionality behind it being created, but it has a directive, and the directive is pretty much to reproduce. So there's no
Yeah.
it's like there is a meaning to life, but it's not something that we are endowed with by like a heavenly being. It's just, you know, the way it is. Like a rock, if there's a rock at the top of the hill and gust of wind blows it down the hill, its prerogative is to, you know, end up at the bottom of the hill. But that doesn't mean there was an intelligent design behind it doing such. That's just what it is seeking to do. So in human nature, you're always going to want to benefit those who are of your nationality. And if you are ever to achieve, you know, a more equitable economic stance, then it has to be under kind of a mono-ethnic society. And that's pretty much the political side of my philosophy. As far as epistemology, metaphysics, and such,
Here's the thing. What if you like don't give a shit about your nationality? Like the same, well, not your nationality, I would say, but like your F, I would say it's more of like, because nationality can be defined as being like Canadian or American. Like,
Mhm.
what if you don't care about your nation? Because me particularly, like most of my genetics come from Poland. I
Well,
could
it's
not care
race,
less
really, not
about,
nationality. I guess
Or
that's what it really
ethnicity.
comes
yeah,
down
I
to,
could
is
not
what you
care
look
less
like.
about what happens to Poland though. I
But I
couldn't
mean,
care
yeah,
less about what happens
I
to people
guess,
who have like Polish genes.
but
Like
what do
it
you care
doesn't,
about your family?
well, I do, but that's because they're so closely like related to me and they're people
Yeah,
that I
so
was
this is
raised
the
by.
I
classic.
There's
think,
like a personal
I think you
connection
got
there. I don't feel that
okay.
sense, and I guess there's a sort of familial connection with people that I share genes with, like cousins and uncles and aunts, even though
Mhm.
I don't know them that well. But when you extrapolate it to people who are like second or third or fourth cousins, arbitrarily, I don't really give a shit.
well, I mean,
Like
I
that
guess
may be
the thing is,
There's a lot of ground I think you guys are missing.
if,
I'm gonna let you riff this out a little bit more though. There's
Well,
something I have to say.
I think that's
Rafa
mostly
agrees with
I
me,
due.
think
I think.
I
yeah,
think
like
Kirsten and I have read some works that you guys might not have read. One done that
it's,
Keith Woods pipeline. But
it just
go
comes
ahead,
down,
guys. Yeah.
it just comes
Um,
down to being more comfortable with people who are the same race as you. Like if you're in a room with a person of every race, you talk to the white guy. But I mean, Pearson, to be honest, I mean, I think I think it's natural for humans, right, to kind of
mhm.
crave this familiarity, right? We are drawn to people who look like us, right? We're drawn to people of the same ethnicity, right? And I think at first it's much easier to make progress with people who look the same as us, just because that's what humans are kind of adapted to do, right? Like I just learned about
Mhm.
this through like parochial altruism, right? The tendency, like humans evolve by having in groups, right? Like the
Mhm.
only way we were able to kind of better ourselves was by having an enemy, right? And that enemy was usually other humans who look different than us, right? We develop differences in order to become stronger, right? But that's not the end goal, right? Like a monoethnic like state isn't one that's fully like it can make more progress, right? Because of the similarity between the people, right? But in terms of like progress evolutionarily, like societally, you would look at a diverse society that's able to overcome those differences as one that's kind of like
I
more
mean,
progressive, kind of more
Rafa,
advanced.
Well,
I mean, Rafa, relating to what you're saying, like I think Poland actually is like the perfect example because it is a mono-ethnic society where 99.8% of people are the same ethnicity. The only problem is the people that are the same ethnicity are all retarded. So it's not like you can build
yeah.
like a really great society on top
Yeah,
of it if
Well,
the
that's
people
because the
themselves don't
Polish
have an
people.
incentive to do it. If the
that well,
geographic
that's the
position isn't the
thing. It
greatest, if
has
you don't have
nothing.
access to resources.
It has nothing to do with like the kind of people themselves. It's just like people can get along better. People can form labor unions easier because they're the same color, they speak the same language, they have the same culture, right? But I think it's a mark of an advanced society for a group of people to be able to overcome those barriers, right?
Yeah, I
Like,
agree.
yeah.
But
So like a mon
I don't think it's possible to overcome something that's hardwired back so far back in the evolutionary chain. I don't think that's possible.
but
And if you
that's the end goal of any species, really, right? Is to overcome what's been programmed into it evolutionarily. Like that's what humans do all the time, right? Like, I mean,
no,
I mean, we
yeah,
are
lots
evolutionarily
of
programmed to like kill other humans as well.
I would
yeah,
yeah.
refuse
that's
to
the
go
thing.
that
We
far.
try to get over our
So
tendencies towards violence, our tendencies toward like sexual aggression, our tendencies to right chase like the next like we have like phones and
well,
dopamine
actually
now,
humans don't
right?
have
We
a
have to
tendency towards
constantly
sexual
overcome things.
aggression. humans don't have a tendency towards social sexual aggression.
Bro, what?
That's not, it's
I
actually
mean,
like a negatively selected for trait, because if you look at, why, here's the thing. If a woman's body is rejecting you, if her brain's rejecting you, this is really weird, but this is true. If her brain and her body are rejecting you, that means that she does not want to pass on your genes. In order to get the most prime way to get a woman pregnant is inseminating after she orgasms, right? You know this? So if she
Why the
is
fuck would
rejecting,
anybody know
no,
this?
because
yeah,
I was
that's
like,
true.
Let's
oh,
go.
why is this? Why do we think this is wrong when it would help us promulgate ourselves? But it actually doesn't, because you're being pretty much genetically rejected. Well, not necessarily genetically, but overall rejected. So it has led
Okay, so you're saying that it's
humans
more
humans
evolutionarily beneficial for
to
sexual,
not
like sexual relations
Yeah,
to be
that makes
consensual.
sense. You
Yeah.
know, that's
If that's what you're saying,
okay.
then that makes sense,
That's
arguably.
that's
Yes.
that's a bad example, right? Sexual aggression, right? I'm not really honed in on,
Just like the
negative
bad stuff that
evolutionary
humans have
traits, but
done.
you
Yeah.
mean, yeah, but you mean there's some bad shit programmed into us because we're animals, right? Like, but everything we've built up today, right? Like everything around us, it's not natural, right? It's just like consequence of overcoming a lot of different evolutionary traits. And I mean, I think as you go further as an advanced, like an intelligent advanced species, you kind of like knock these things down one by one, right? Like if unless it's absolutely impossible, right, for an intelligent species to overcome what's programmed into it evolutionarily, right, which it's not, because we've proven that to ourselves, right, then it's only natural for a more advanced species to have overcome bigger evolutionary hurdles, right? And one of those bigger hurdles is monoethnicism and our kind of like draw towards that. So just because it's easier to us because of who we are naturally doesn't mean it's a mark of a progressive society. I think it's actually the opposite.
Okay. So your argument against that is basically that just because it's natural does not mean it's good, right?
Yeah.
I would argue against that, and I would say just if something is natural, then that means it's evolutionarily selected for.
That would
Yeah.
require the argument that evolution is infallible.
Yeah, there's a lot to have to take here.
Evolution in a way is infallible over like millions and millions and millions of years. Of course, it's going to get better over the course of millions and millions and millions of years, but every gene that is selected for, the reason why we have it is because that survived over other genes. So it's not perfect.
I don't
but
completely
it's
I
agree.
just, to be
How did
honest,
how did the
I've always
There's
thought
so much.
this.
how did
I've
the
always
gene
thought
of
this,
talk
like,
how did the gene of talking a lot survive in Jordan's family?
Probably his dad was well, his ancestors were probably
Throwing mad
like,
riz, yeah, but
no,
is that
no, they were
infallible?
probably
so it
working
led
at
to social
auctions. They were
cohesion.
probably working at auctions. Like his Russian ancestors were probably selling potato stew or whatever in like
Nah,
an auction. They
there's a
were like,
lot. There are many
so
mistakes.
say it's a potato stew or soup or some kind of thing like this, some kind of thing like this, like a soup or a stew, or that's probably what his great grandfather was doing. So
They were naming all the synonyms for the stew that they were selling. Yeah.
yeah.
Rafa, you were gonna say something.
Yeah,
There's
I
a lot
mean,
that I have to
I thought
say.
it was always really interesting. We're not really going to be able to understand like this argument itself, like, is evolution infallible? I just Evolution is only really applied to species that can't talk, that aren't intelligent, right? Like it guides them, like that's how they survive, right? The weak ones die, the strong ones survive, right? But we have like it's up to us now, right? As in, we can talk about evolution, we can debate about whether or not it's infallible, right? We kind of decide our own evolution in a sense because we're the ones making the decisions for our species instead of like a million-year natural process.
Do you
So I
think,
just think,
okay, Rafa, I have a question. Do you think humans
yeah,
have free will?
Oh shit. I was actually
I
gonna
mean, I just before I get into that, I just want to say I think it's going to be much easier to answer this question once we're able to study an intelligent species that's been around for like a million years, right? Let's say humans, right, survived, all these future challenges, whatever, no nuclear war, climate change is okay, and we went on to like, travel the stars. Then we would really see the impact of evolution on an intelligent species, because as far as species go, we haven't really been around that long, like not enough for any real study. Um, in terms of free will, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I
yo,
mean,
okay,
I
bro,
Yeah,
I've got
I'll
a
pose
job.
the argument.
I'm not religious, so no.
No, I'll pose the
If
argument that humans don't have any free will, and I would consider myself, I would not say overly religious, but like
in a real if
semi-religious.
there's
Yeah,
if I think
I
there's two
think
ways of going about
predeterminism
it,
is
right? There's
at
like
least
there's like
semi-valid.
you have no free will in like a universal religious sense, right? God's written it out, right? Or you
Yeah,
have
something
like
like that.
the answer
Christianity
the
supports free
smart
will.
ass smart ass answer, which is like, oh, you are the product of your culture and your society and your parents' upbringing.
We're
So really, you have
stardust,
no
bro.
free will, because everything that you're doing has been programmed into you by your surroundings. But that's like I always
I
find that
believe that humans have an
annoying.
absolute free will, actually. So I'm a radical libertarian when it comes to
What's
free
That's
your
will.
stupid. That's very
And
what
actually,
stupid.
no, but let me explain because there's a lot
what's
that is
your
said here.
what's your wait
There's
wait
a
what's your reasoning, Jacob?
Okay, if we were to undertake like the theory of like the Big Bang and the universe expanding and it all being made at some point, if there was some origin point whatsoever for the universe, which it poses many questions that there wasn't an origin point and the universe always existed, but to our understanding there must have been an origin point, then every single action that has ever existed in the universe, every single thing that has happened had a cause, and it is an effect of that cause. So, I was born because my
uh,
dad like nutted into my mom, and the only reason that my dad nutted into my mom is because my grandfather nutted into my grandmother. It's like so
uh,
on, so on, so on, back to the origin of the universe. Every single action that has like ever existed as a result of a butterfly effect that started way before it. So when we think logically, there have been way more things that happened because there are several outcomes to each thing that happens. Like, let's say, like I knock over my glass. Not only does the glass break, but it makes like a loud noise. Every single time that something happens, it creates like a variety of different outcomes and choices. If we extrapolate, if we go back and back and back and back, it just reduces the amount of outcomes that happens. And because the universe is structured in a specific way, I mean, like physically, if you extrapolate, every single action that has happened and will happen, if you go back, 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 there is a cause and a reason for everything. The only reason that our brains work or think of a specific way is because of how they're made, how they're structured, how we've evolved over time. There's no such thing as free will because we don't know what's going to happen yet. But if you had like a perfect picture of the laws of gravity, of the map of our brain, of our previous experiences, of the environment surrounding us, if you had a perfect if you copy and pasted the entire universe into ChatGPT, it could with like 99.99% accuracy determine what the next thing you're going to do is because it's just determined by this amount of factors. The fact that you haven't thought of it yet does not mean that the outcome is going to be unique. Like in the
But
same way,
that
like
doesn't like
I don't know how warm, my microwave meal is going to be when I put it in the microwave. I don't know how exactly warm it's going to be, but there is like some
yeah.
factor in the universe that has like a very solid definition. Like it will get warm no matter what I do. So it's like it's
But
the process of the brain. No matter what, how much I try to think, it's gonna come to the same conclusion because my thoughts are
yeah.
all based off stuff that has happened before and the genetic environmental factors that are influencing it. I feel like
Hmm.
living life is just like watching a movie of things go down in a very specific way. But because of your environment, genetics, and different stuff that has happened beforehand, just in general, in not just a biological predeterminism way, but just because of everything that's happening around in the universe, causing a cause and a reaction, you're determined and like predetermined to think and act and do things in a very specific way.
But just
Yep.
because you can predict someone's going to do something doesn't mean that they have the choice not to
Yeah.
do it. I
If you
think the
can predict
choice
it
is
with
what
like a
defines free will. Like
99.999%
that,
accuracy,
but
Dude,
that means
that's
no,
like
because
I don't think that's that's a lack of free will. It's just like it's very predictable. But free will is defined by not having a choice, right?
no, I
I
think
don't
what
think
Rolf
we
is
have a
getting at
choice
is
because
that
I don't think we have like autonomy over how we think. I think it's influenced by
No,
everything around us.
no, but you do have a choice, right? You're influenced incredibly, right? But you can always choose not to, right?
no,
Like
you
very
can't.
simple, very simple, like a simple analogy, right? I'm very hungry. I'm gonna go to the fridge, right? Everyone could predict that, right? A toddler could predict that, right?
Yeah, but
But
I can't choose not to be
do
an
I still
idiot.
have do I still have free choice, like free will in that decision? Yeah, absolutely. Because
You
I
have
could choose
choices,
not
but it's
to.
predetermined ultimately by your neuropsychology and the physics and the chemistry in your brain, which one you will ultimately decide on. I truly believe that in like a million years, if AI gets advanced enough, it's going to have an equation that is advanced enough to predict everything that will ever happen in like the next billion years, because everything is a physical reaction to something else.
Real,
You
yeah.
understand? Yeah.
um,
Like if I'm predetermined to be ugly as shit, then I'm not gonna get huzz. Like there are factors in our life that influence the way things end up for us, and AI can very much predict that.
I think that what Rolf was talking about though is that there's a difference between a colloquial understanding of free will, which has to do with our ability to actually make free and literary decisions in the present moment, and the metaphysics, which is a much more fundamental topic, fundamental area of discussion. And he's probably saying that from a metaphysical level, you guys haven't really provided an argument that free will doesn't exist. I mean, because all of these claims are about individual instantiations of action, specific actions themselves, not whether or not humans have the capability in a more radical sense to act in a different way. And as I stated earlier, I'm actually a radical libertarian when it comes to free will. So I think we have an absolute free will because, well, first of all, there are many, I think, conceptual errors that are floating around here. But I don't really think that human behavior is determined by anything. I think we can actually do whatever we want from a metaphysical standpoint. And I think that
I don't
actually
think that's true.
that belief is actually compatible with a Christian belief. Because I'm not really a religious person in the sense of adhering to an actual faith,
Weren't you
some
gonna
type of
convert to
organ,
Islam?
an
Just
or
side note.
no, that was a weird, dumb phase. I don't really, I've distanced myself from
Okay.
that. Yeah.
You're
And I think
becoming a
Islam's,
Sufi.
no, I think Islam's wrong about a lot. Just as I've actually learned
Yeah.
more about theology and thought more deeply about that. That was kind of a dumb phase. I don't really know what was going through my head. And remember, I actually used to be basically a diehard new atheist, which is pretty much as
Yeah, I'm
far
gonna
away from
take Jordan out
religion.
for pork chops
Yeah.
sometime.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, I
Yeah.
just don't really like pork that much anyways. So actually, I wouldn't really eat it
Yeah, it's
regardless.
you were just like, oh, I
Hmm.
don't like pork that much. Let's convert to Islam.
Well, no, but I did become a vegetarian though recently. So I just don't eat meat anymore. Anyways. So
Why?
just a variety of reasons. I just think I mean, it's a decision that's been on my mind, or it's an idea that's been on my mind for a very long time since I was 13, 14 years old. But I never really had the balls to act on it until recently. And I just think it's the right choice to make from an ethical perspective. I mean, that could be another
Okay.
debate that we can have.
Well,
That could be a
okay.
good topic. No, but there's so
As
much that you guys threw around that I think is a little bit flawed. I think there's so many different problems here that we need to address. But first of
as
all, I
far
don't
as
believe.
metaphysics, as far as
Yeah, go ahead.
metaphysics,
Yeah,
I want to
yeah.
say the basis of materialism. Read like page one, part one, first thing in fucking the Tractatus by Wittgenstein. The
Tractatus.
only thing that exists are material facts, atomic facts. Yes. So
I think he's
a
wrong about that.
reaction,
No,
really, so a reaction in the brain will cause
no,
certain nerve endings to fire, certain hormones to go off.
no, man.
Really? What do you think?
No.
What do you
Because
think
I
is
don't believe
happening?
we talked about this on the podcast with Dante. Don't you remember? This is actually the exact debate that I had, and he was also pushing for a physical stance, which I think is wrong. I think there are many logical arguments that show that it's wrong. There are tons of different ways to disprove it. I've just tried to formalize it in a more rigorous manner as of late. But we can touch on those if you like. But what I remember from that podcast that he brought it up is that you were actually more neutral at the time, I think. You didn't really take a side. So did you actually arrive at a more concrete stance about metaphysics, about these types of questions?
Yes.
And also because Platonism doesn't really align with physicalism. I
Yeah,
don't
I'm
see how
not a
you can be.
Platonist. I'm not a
You're not a
Platonist.
Platonist? Okay.
I changed my mind.
Yeah. I
I'm
mean, your
more
bio was Platonist in the past. So that's it. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Okay, yeah. So
Yeah,
you changed that.
I used to be into Christian Platonism. I thought I went over this like the first thing in this
Yeah.
podcast,
Oh,
right,
okay. You
Jacob?
used to be into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
Wait, so did you left Christianity?
Yes, because I
Oh,
was into Kierkegaard, right?
okay. Oh, so Kierkegaard got you into Christianity, yeah.
Yeah, and then I realized that that's cope, and then um,
Yeah.
but no, I'm mostly as far as so as far as most philosophy, I would say I align mostly with Schopenhauer, and then as far as metaphysics, I would say Wittgenstein, and then as far as like ethics and such, I would say um Max Stirner, I would say, is an influence,
Oh,
but
fuck.
I'm not an anarchist. I just think he's right that
Total egoism.
you know, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
That's
everything you do is for yourself, and you can rationalize it with like morality and religion and laws, but it's completely out of self-interest and self-preservation. Following the law does not mean that you actually believe in, you know, whatever law. It means that you're self-preserving to avoid the consequences of breaking such law.
Can we please address what happened to Flying Cabal? Because
Yeah, I
you
mean,
do that for a
yeah,
year.
see, the thing is, man, I shouldn't really say it's not really the proper etiquette for me to, it's not aligned with the proper etiquette for me to say too much about the entire situation and
We're
all
not
of
going
that.
to say too
But I'll
much.
say
Flying
that he's not
Kabbalah
really,
left. Has everybody listening realized that yet? By the fact that he hasn't been a podcast episode for a year. He left. He's gone. He left in
I think
September
what was his
2023.
what was his last episode? I think with
It
JF.
was like number 4 or number 5.
Wasn't it with JF?
Yeah, it was.
Garvey,
It was.
over a year ago, a year and a half. That's
Yeah.
fucking crazy. No, I'm not gonna say too much because he wouldn't like that. It's not gonna be right for me.
Founding member though.
Yeah, he should be in our vicinity if we're to say anything about him. But to go back to Pearson, to what you're saying, dude, I think okay, so there are areas in which I disagree with you. In my views, I mean, I've gone through so many transformations over the years that, and actually, it's funny that we're talking about this because I haven't even been in this headspace for so long. I mean, there was a
Mhm.
period of my life in which I was much more intensely ideological and I was obsessed with, I was one of those fucking political compass nerds. Remember political compass memes? The
Yeah, I
subreddit,
remember
bro,
that.
that was some shit. And that's actually that's a part of why I was such good friends with Flying Kabbalah because we were both into that type of shit and then Destiny and the debate bro culture and all of that. And that's how I found out about guys like Eric Stryker and yeah, it's an entire fucking rabbit hole, bro. I think
Eric
Pearson,
Striker's a fucking idiot, by the way. He's a fucking
yeah.
idiot.
Dude, did
I
you see
can't
what
stand
happened?
I can't
I mean,
stand
I
his
don't.
fucking laugh. Have you ever heard his laugh? It's like if you like Tucker Carlson, if you've ever listened to him, his laugh pisses me off. But
Dude,
Eric
I fucking
Stryker's
hate
is
his
like
laugh, bro.
the same fucking laugh times 10. He's like, it's like, shut the fuck up, dude.
Tucker
Shut
Carlson's
the
laugh
fuck
really
up.
is annoying though. It's
Yeah,
like
hold on.
Tucker Carlson is just, yeah. He went fucking
He's a
schizo,
fed.
bro. Did you see that he said that he got attacked by
What?
demons
What is the
in his
future
sleep?
that these liberals want for America? My wife is currently in a bed with another man. What happened? What led to this?
He's kind of
Did no,
changed
did you
his
see that
tune though.
he said that he got attacked by demons in his sleep and that he's scared for his life? No, bro, that's what he's been talking about as of late. He just went
Jordan,
he went full fucking schizo. It's insane. And he talked to
Jordan,
Dugan.
check the chat.
What is this, bro?
I sent my political compass results.
Yeah, I'm in the same
Oh
quadrant. I see
shit.
it.
This takes me so back, bro. Wait, is this oh my God. The nostalgia
Uh,
buzz is just kicking in. It's Sapley Valleys too, bro. You had to pick the more niche one. Couldn't be a fucking
Yeah,
plebe
because
making eight
it
values
makes
and put
more
It
it.
has the
sense. It makes
conservative
more sense.
progressive meter, which the normal compass doesn't account for.
Yeah. Oh man, we
Yeah.
really must have gone down the same rebels. But yeah, anyways, so what I think, okay, they failed to I think they failed to understand. We can talk about, bro, there's so much funny shit with Eric Stryker. There's too
Yeah.
much to say. I don't not that much of it is YouTube friendly just because he's literally his entire existence is like a fuck you to YouTube and
I don't know
that
who this
Mhm.
man
sphere.
is.
You
I
don't
don't
know
know who
Eric
this man
Stryker,
is.
bro?
No.
Dude, how do you not? Actually, you know what? I don't know. It's not really a big deal. You're not really wasting any time. You haven't really missed out on that much, except for some funny drama. But anyways, to get back to the more serious discussion before the shit talking of Eric Stryker, I think what they missed in your entire line of argumentation was
Mhm.
what you were trying to hint at was this argument. I don't necessarily completely agree with it, but I do think that this is probably what you were trying to communicate, even if they didn't fully understand it, is that
Yeah,
when
please
you
repeat
think
that
about
10 times. Get it
when
to the
you
point.
think
Yeah.
about morality, which is the fundamental question, because I do think that in some sense ethics is actually the most important branch of philosophy, if you think of philosophy as an organized endeavor, and that underlies pretty much everything that we do. So whenever we talk about politics and whenever we talk about policy, oftentimes we just say that this policy would be bad and this policy would be good, or this candidate would be better than an alternative candidate, and so on and so forth. And that divide is what leads to polarization, the very intense polarization that you see not only in America but in many different societies throughout history. That's the fundamental driver of historical conflict, I think, and social conflict. It's basically disagreements over not just ideology, but on the more granular level, what we should do in individual decisions. And I think that's actually what all of life is. So to me, human history and human lives on the individual level. And this is actually a really Spenglerian point. Because I don't know if you got on the Spengler, but he actually writes
A
about
little
this
bit.
exact point in books like Decline of the West. I mean, he was trying to use more poetic language, obviously, but he basically, and he was, it's somewhat metaphorical, but there's definitely a direct truth that's embedded within that metaphor, which is that human history is basically, it's not necessarily a direct series of events that just embedded in some past that's out there that's detached from us. It's actually more of a narrative that we're retroactively constructing in real time. And we tell it to ourselves because it aligns basically with our psychology and with our tendency towards narrativizing, towards myth making. So really the idea
Yep.
of history is actually just that, an idea. Without that idea, all that there is just static events with no pattern, no meaning, no order. But history is just how we organize all of that, everything that's happened to our past into a narrative. So it's really up to the ideological players at hand to actually mold the idea of history. And human life is the same way. So all that human life is basically, well, technically it's just a series of events, and you could say that the events are basically random. But then on top of that series, we layer on ideas about meaning, about struggle, about purpose, about what we should do in our life, why life has value, why I did this yesterday instead of this. And politics and history are literally just the same. They're just scaled upwards. It's basically just one long debate about what we should do in life and what's good in life. It's like a debate bros dream in a sense. It's just a wet dream of the debate bros. And all of that presupposes morality. So whenever it's, and
Mhm.
even art as well, I don't really think that aesthetics is actually completely disconnected from morality, because when we make judgments about the quality of aesthetic objects or whether or not objects are even aesthetic in the first place, we're really saying, we're talking about whether or not they're good or bad, basically. I mean, we're talking about whether or not they please us or displease us, unless you take a different, more metaphysical approach to aesthetics that isn't grounded in empirical perception. But even Nietzsche made that point. He said that, we react differently to the death of a beautiful butterfly or of a beautiful animal than that of an ugly animal. And you can obviously apply that to many different parts of life. So I think aesthetics and morality are intertwined. That's the fundamental subject. So I would actually prefer, in some sense, if before we even talked about anything else, we just went straight into metaethics. And I think when it comes to metaethics, there isn't really a better school of thought than analytic philosophy. You have to be as logically rigorous as possible and even a little bit autistic, to be honest, to actually understand what it is that we're talking about when we talk about ethics, about the difference between right and wrong, and where that actually comes from. So there isn't really a topic that's more fundamental than that. And what Pearson, I think, was trying to get at, I mean, obviously you can provide your own assessment because you're the person who said this. And again, I don't completely agree with it. I'm just trying to work out a better understanding of his position because I think most people sorely misunderstand what ethno-nationalists actually believe in, even though I'm not an ethno-nationalist. I don't advocate for that position entirely. I think it has its pros, but also has its cons. Is that okay? When you think about morality, we generally agree that, or this is what I think Pearson was trying to say, we generally agree that you should probably avoid or refrain from certain behaviors like torturing others, killing others, robbing others, except under very, very particular and fine-tuned circumstances. But that doesn't mean that the extent of our moral obligations applies equally with respect to all individuals on Earth. So you might actually have more of an obligation to help someone who's closer to you than you have to someone who's much farther away from you. And that's why,
Mhm.
and that ties into the more empirical account, which is people tend to be much more deeply attached to their families than they would to other people. And so what he was really saying, and what some ethno-nationalists say, the smarter ones, is, okay, if you were to consider your family, you would probably, on any given day, and with all else being equal, if a family member asked you to help you move furniture, this is an example that Joel Davis brought up. Pierce, I don't know, do you know Joel Davis? Yeah, he brought up
Yeah.
this. I mean, again, I think he's way too crazy in certain areas. I'm not extreme like him. But I thought it was a smart way of thinking about the topic. He said, if someone in your family asked you to help you move furniture, that becomes a very important obligation, even though the task itself is actually a little bit mundane and it's not that interesting in the grand scheme of affairs. But if a random stranger who you've never met asks you to engage in some chore, you're probably not going to be rude to them. I mean, you might, unless you're just a piece of shit, you might treat them with some decency. Most people would, but it's not going to be as important for you. And you're not really going to bump it up to your list of obligations and to your list of highest priorities. And so I think what Pearson is saying is, if we talk about our families in such a manner, why don't we just scale that up to ethnicity if ethnicity is basically just extended family in some sense on a much larger
Yeah,
scale? Is
yeah.
that
Well,
basically what
that
you're trying to, is that what you
yes,
were trying to
yes.
say?
But
So
there
what
are
he's
two
saying is, so yeah,
points.
the last
Hold
part
on.
is, okay, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
There are two minor points that actually made me think about. First, I think you were talking about closeness, and that
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
made me think of something. So, Neil deGrasse Tyson has this rant. I know he's like a pseudo intellectual or whatever, like a fucking Reddit, but he has this
I
rant
fucking
where
love
he
science.
says, yeah, he has this rant where he says basically the bow and arrow was the end of bravery because you could kill somebody without looking them in the eye, and that ICBMs are like an extension of that, and that war is just, how far can you get away from other people with and kill them, right? And that made me think of, kind of, about the when the tree falls in the forest doesn't make
Yeah,
a
yeah, the
sound, like
metaphysics. Yeah.
the whole idealist argument. um and if an ICBM goes off and it bombs another country, right? Most people, because those people are so physically far away from them, will not really comprehend the gravity of that decision. Like when we bomb Iran, when we bomb Palestine, when we like,
Yeah.
they think it's so funny when like they do a pager attack and like blow up a million Lebanese people in like the most unethical way possible, the most cowardly way possible, and they think it's funny. If you're able to see that, like the footage that I think Julian Assange put out, where it showed like them bombing civilians, then it kind of gives the average person a better perspective on it. But it also kind of destroys the idealist concept because of those cameras. It destroys the concept of, if a tree falls in the forest, did it make a sound? Now that everywhere, we understand what's going on everywhere in the world, then we have to understand, well, yeah, it will make a sound. It will make a sound because ultimately, um, what I'm getting at is, if you don't see it, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. And that was something that we kind of always knew, but humans didn't have to come face to face with it until we had video technology and stuff like that, and fast sharing of it, like on social media. Anyway, what you said about Joel Davis, yeah, I actually don't agree with everything that he says, but looking through history, the unfortunate thing is that moderates do not win. Okay, if there's anything you can learn from the Russian Revolution, it wasn't the Mensheviks that were pushing, you know, social reform, economic reform that won. It's always the more radical party that actually changes things, sometimes for the worst, but sometimes you need like those insane fucking people to push the boundaries so much you know in order for the moderate position to come about in practice, right? So, like a conservative, if they're saying, you know uh, all like this culturally right-wing stuff, and then they're arguing with like somebody on the left who's saying the opposite, who is going to dictate um, that conservative worldview coming into practice? It's not going to be the conservative. It's going to be like the reactionary, um, kind of vile element that's actually going to be able to bring that into fruition. So I kind of disagree with you there, but sorry, I kind of went off on a series
No,
of
it's fine.
things.
I get what you're trying to make. Wait, so you said the argument was, you're saying history shows us that the moderates tend to lose? That's
Well, the moderates tend to um, be, you know, it's like kind of dialectical materialist way of viewing it. It's like if you're these two forces are fighting together, right? The synthesis is going to be somewhere here. If my goal is to be here, then I'm not going to be able to achieve it by staying here, because eventually the opposition is going to also bring it closer together. If I'm trying to get here and my opposition is here, I want to be all the way out here so that it comes together here, right? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
That's
do.
kind of a weird way of explaining it, but that's just kind of the way it is. It wasn't the people asking for less tax on tea that won the American Revolution. It wasn't like the reformists that won the French Revolution. It was the people who won the French Revolution were the people who saying, oh, the people who are saying just make it reform, we need to behead them. And that's kind of an extreme example, but it's just what caused, the tyrannical monarchy to end. Talking about reform would not cause any reform. It would just legitimate the position of the monarchy, because it would say that monarchy can exist in an ethical way. No, it can't exist in an ethical way. So they needed the kind of insane position to win in order to get rid of the monarchy.
No, yeah, I agree with you
But
on that. I think you're
I mean,
referring to the idea.
one.
Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, if I was just to, I guess you need both, right? Because if it was only people saying death to the king and chopping people's heads off and tarring and feathering people, if it was only them, then nothing would have happened either, because that would have been like chalked off as like
Yeah,
a
because
group
nobody
of
would support
terrorists or a
them.
group of extremists. Yeah, so you need the moderates just as you need the extremists. Like
Mhm.
moderates provide a foundation, right? Like usually a regulated and ethical one, and the extremists take steps that the moderates are unwilling to, that kind of show
Yeah.
the resolve of the
Even
cause.
even what Jordan was talking about with Joel Davis, you saw the NSN lately, they had a march and it was probably 50,000 like conservatives, but it was being led by the National Socialist Network. Because of that reason, they kind of need to have a symbiotic relationship in order to
Yeah.
function. Like the communists and the progressives, they need each other more than anything, because who is going to give the communists the time of day? Who is going to give the communists
Good
like
old leftist
all that?
infighting.
Leftist
Yeah, well,
infighting, bro.
leftist
Yeah,
infighting is retarded, but
never gets old.
Well,
Yeah, I think it's generally detrimental, but somewhat warranted in some instances. I
You're a
have pretty
traitor to
complex views
the
on that.
revolution.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. My views on that have shifted over time, bro, because I've been influenced by different people. But I think so, Pearson, you're basically referring to the idea, if I'm not mistaken, of pushing the Overton window. Is that what
Yeah,
you're talking about? There's
sort of.
this window within which most discourse falls, and you
Hmm.
think that the beneficial aspect of people who are somewhat more radical on either end of the political spectrum is that they enable us and they compel us to consider different ideas that wouldn't
Hmm.
have been considered within the scope of possibility in the past. That's
Hmm.
basically the argument.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think then probably what Rolf is trying to ask you is, what ideas do you think? First of all, what do you think of the term far right? I mean, it's been thrown around so frequently, it's just by the
Okay.
media and all of this. Do you think that it's a
Here's
legitimate faction that has, and it's not the same thing as the alt-right, because alt-right is that's a fucking terrible label in so many ways, and it comes with so much baggage. But do you think that that's actually a movement, or
well, it's hard to describe, because when you're talking about where left and right come from, it comes from the French
Yeah,
Revolution.
French Revolution, yeah,
The
the
left
assembly.
was the Revolutionary Party, and the historical left has always been the revolutionaries and such. If I was far right, then that would mean that I'm in favor of uh, like what Trump is doing, or like monarch. If Trump becoming the monarch of America, no, that's not what I'm advocating for. I would actually describe my position as far left, because
I
even though I
describe my
have,
position as farting.
huh?
Nothing. Go on.
I didn't fucking hear you. What did you say?
Nothing. I said I described my position as farting.
Uh,
Oh, okay.
right. Um,
Yeah.
well done.
so yeah, I would describe my position as far left, but I think the only way to achieve those goals is through kind of culturally traditional things that have always been culturally traditional because it's stable. History is kind of like physics in a way. So physics, it's not survival of the fittest necessarily, it's always survival of the stable. You can say like Germany in the 40s was the strongest. It didn't survive because it was unstable because they were waging a multi-front war. Or you look at Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia was it like it Tito basically turned it into somewhat of an economic powerhouse, but it was unstable because of the amount of infighting that was going on in Yugoslavia. So it just completely collapsed and that civilization died. So what was I getting at before? What was the
question is, what do you think of the term far right? Is
Far
that
right,
the
yeah.
yes?
movement or?
So it's ultimately what will survive is what is stable. And the reason I was bringing that up is because in order to come to far left political and economic positions, like a great example of this is uh, the Spanish Civil War. So
Yeah,
on one
yeah,
side,
very-
you had the far left, which was the Marxist faction. They were able to pretty much have a stable state because unlike the Francoist regime, which was actually something that you would describe as far right, they were kind of a mono-ethnic society and they were culturally conservative for the most part, except for some radical anarchists. Whereas the Francoists, although they won the war, the reason they won the war was because they essentially destabilized um, the Spanish Republic to such an extent by sanctions, which is what the United States does to every country that is not fitting into their version of global hegemony, which is actually why I support Russia in the Ukraine war. I don't have any so sorry, I'm kind of going off on tangents, but also
that's
the Francoist regime pushed like homosexuality in the Republic. They also pushed, they actually imported millions and millions and well, I don't know if it's millions and millions. They pushed a good amount of like Africans and such into the country to kind of, um, that's kind of what made it unstable. Also, it's frankly a more libertarian socialist economy, and army is not really all that stable. So what is going to be stable under a socialist government is going to be mono ethnic groups, traditional values as far as family, kind of an authoritarian structure, things like that, because that's what survived across history. It's not like this free market, well, not free market in terms of market, but like a free market culture where everybody's allowed to individually express themselves in whatever way they like. That's not
yeah.
what survives.
So which era of Spain are you describing around? The one that you think failed because of the factors that you just mentioned?
Republican Spain failed, but
Oh, Republican
because
Spain.
I
Yeah.
support I support the Republic as far as the as opposed to the Francoist faction.
Okay. Yeah. I would have supported a Republic as well. Yeah, that's a topic that I definitely obsessed over back in the day when I was more intensely ideological. I would think about the Spanish Civil War and the side that would have fought on. I would have supported the Republic, definitely. I would
I
have
would
fought
have
on both
probably
sides.
supported the Republic too. What about you, Rob?
Yeah. That actually would have been very
I don't know enough about it.
damn,
What do you
bro.
mean
Yeah,
Come
enough?
on.
No.
actually,
We're a pro-Republican Spain the fucking podcast.
Are we?
you know
Yeah,
what's
no, come
crazy?
on.
I'm gonna look
What?
into it. I might come back with some different opinions.
Okay.
You'd
Okay.
probably
But
support the Republic, but
You
yeah.
probably would, yeah.
you want to know some crazy facts about the Republic and
Sure.
Yes,
Tell me some
please.
some
crazy
of their
facts about the Republic.
geopolitical ties?
Yes.
One of them was before the war. Guess who they supplied arms to?
Ooh.
No clue.
The National Socialist Wehrmacht. They
Nice.
they
Serious?
they supplied guns to them. It's
Oh
true.
yeah, I'd
And then the
low-key
other
definitely
thing,
support the Republic. Sorry, yeah.
and then and then after the war, when Franco took over and pretty much became like a monarchist, liberal, like a Pinochet type state, where it's like
I mean, the Italians, the Germans supplied weapons to Ethiopia when the Italians were fighting them. There are a lot of
yeah,
weird like
yeah.
interwar alliances.
But the main thing is the guy that everybody knows about from the Second World War after what happened, he said, if I had known what would happen to the phalangists, which were like the actual um kind of like my position or whatever you want to say in that war, people like Ledesma who were actually like um you know
At the frontier.
actually
Yeah.
actually realistically left wing, but fought for for the Francoist side because of its traditionalist qualities. Because essentially the Francoist regime killed all of them. He said if he knew what would have happened and what the regime would have turned out to be, that he would have supported the Republic, which is like the Marxist
Yeah. Well, there were
leftist
anarchists mixed
side.
in as well, but
Yeah.
oh wow. So wait, they were supplying arms to the
The
Wehrmacht.
Wehrmacht. And
That's
Hitler said
crazy.
that if he knew what would have happened with Franco, that he would have supported the Republic instead.
But what happened afterwards that was so upsetting to him? What happened?
It pretty much became a liberal democratic state,
Oh,
like a capitalist state, like not too different from Pinochet or Trump or anything like that.
yeah. Speaking of Trump, do you think that, okay, I mean, there's so many different threads to explore here, but what do you think of the so-called right-wing support for Trump and just the general craze around him? Because it never really made that much sense to me. I mean, it made sense from the perspective of normie cons, as they call them. You know those types, and like
Mhm.
some of the neocons as well, because on the policy levels, he's just not really that different from them. I think, I mean, it makes sense that they would support him. But if you were on any right-wing space on the internet, maybe 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago, going back to the Donald subreddit days, which was just fucking toxic. Even back then, but especially in retrospect, even to today, to subreddit like conservative and shit like that. I mean, there's just this Trump frenzy for the most part. And they think that he's just the savior of the world, basically, definitely the savior of America, at least. And I was wondering what you thought about that. Because I know you, so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you've described yourself as more of a right-wing guy in the past. And I know that you
Yeah.
definitely have, you're embedded within, maybe not within a tradition, but within, can I say this, embedded within a scene. It seems like there are people who are somewhat further right, who have a slightly different approach to what the right wing even means, who are more critical of him. So what have you thought
Yeah.
about him? Because he's a huge
Um,
figure. I mean, you can't really escape him.
I
But
mean, okay, so I have very negative feelings towards neoconservatism, and I have very positive feelings towards paleoconservatism. And I think
okay,
that Donald Trump is a neoconservative who uses paleoconservative rhetoric to gain support. So that's my position on him.
that's
I think
basically.
he's a total scumbag. I don't think he could ever be a nationalist. You can't be a billionaire and be a nationalist. That's just a contradiction. If you were really a nationalist, if you really cared about your country, would you really have like a 100-story golden tower? I don't think so. Would you really be giving like corporate bailouts to billionaires? I don't think so.
Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
I do think that he's basically trash in pretty much every way. I think his policies are just nonsense for most
Yeah.
part. Even the policies to me that seem more, well, I'm not really a, see, nationalism is a difficult term. I mean, that's such a topic in and of itself. I'm not really an ethno-nationalist. I think the term ethnicities, it has a definition, but it would be better if it was more clearly defined. But I do agree that some level of national cohesion is present. And I also think that the world, in terms of human behavior, human activity, human cultures, is obviously not completely homogeneous. And it's actually nice to
Mhm.
preserve that state of heterogeneity. I do think that different people groups have different souls, different essences. I do think that that shapes the way in which they behave and actually conceive of the world. I think it's embedded in their tradition. So I'm not completely opposed to nationalism. I probably have more of a both a practical and more of a mythic or mythological approach to it, you could say. But I don't really think that Trump even qualifies, despite the fact that so many people in the media, so many pundits say he's an American nationalist. His agenda is one of an emphasis on domestic policy, protectionism, pulling us out of foreign wars, anti-interventionism. I mean, that was the main draw that people were talking about back in the day. even if you're on
He
places
doesn't
like
really, he doesn't
Muslim.
care about that. Like to be honest, when I
Yeah.
look at Trump, I look at someone who's pretty apolitical. Like he kind of just lets people attach ideas to him, but he does whatever like boosts his own ego. He doesn't actually care about the country or the policies he's enacting. He just cares about being at the top and being seen as kind of this like God figure. I just,
Yeah,
I
actually,
mean,
oh, sorry.
yeah, I mean, to be honest with Trump, it's like the same thing happens over and over again in his like thousands of years. I think it's humanity's one of its biggest problems, and at least one of the largest problems in terms of like running governments, running democracies, is that you're always going to have these kind of like dictators and cults of personalities like take over, right? Like it's happened so many times. Every single civilization, every government, democracy, autocracy, whatever, right? It's you end up with one of these people, right? Um, but sometimes, right, like most of the time, actually, they actually come from a pretty kind of well-developed political background, right? They happen to combine this very like their skilled use of rhetoric with extreme ideas and some mental health issues, right? And that's how you get people like Hitler, right? Like, wow, he's there's a cult of personality right about him. He's like a far right dictator, right? But he had a vision for his country. He had a strong political belief. He began as a in like grassroots political organizations. You can same thing about Mao, Xi Jinping, Mussolini, Franco, right? Like, and then you go
I wouldn't really group
further back
Mao
and
in
further
the
back.
rest, but that's more of a debate for that we can talk about later.
Yeah,
Bro, don't
maybe
judge.
I,
Yeah,
I
go
know
ahead.
too
Sorry, my
much
bad, bro.
about
Yeah,
Mao, but
no,
what I'm
no.
saying is, right, all these
Yeah.
people, right, generally tend to be pretty politically active, right? Trump, on the other hand, right, it's like he's never picked up a textbook in his life, right? He doesn't really know any history, right? He doesn't know what paleoconservatism is, right?
Dude, he
If
called
you if you
No, he
asked
Lenin
him,
does.
Lenin. He called
like
him
no,
Lenin.
like this dude, like I just don't think he's very like I might be wrong here, right? But I mean, there's two things. Sorry, that I'm saying is one that we've just fallen into our trap again, right? It's that a large and like a significant portion of a country's population cannot help but want this kind of like godlike cult of personality leader over something else because those are the usually the kind of like impoverished, uneducated like majority of a country, right? That
Hmm.
for them it's much easier to understand a simple, powerful speaker, right? Rather than actually like engage themselves in any sort of like productive political debates, right? Um, and that's happened with Trump now, right? Like, and that's it leads to these kind of like dictators and authoritarians. Like, it is kind of like slippery slope into fascism always starts with this figure, right?
No, I don't think Trump is a
He,
fascist at all. Actually, you know what I think? I was trying to say this earlier. I think QAnon is a marketing scheme that Donald Trump intentionally implemented because there are some things with that conspiracy theory that there's no way there's no way that's a coincidence. I think it's a fucking marketing scheme to get like stupid people on his side. You see what I'm saying? Like there are some like weird things where like he's alluded to the theory and like all the retards are like, oh, that means it's real. That means he's really fighting a fucking this is a shadow war with the elites. It's like,
well, you
no.
don't
Fighting the
you don't think
interdimensional
well
child.
there are definitely some kind of like he's similar to a fascist. You can see why people compare him to fascists.
He uses
Damn, bro.
Like,
fascist rhetoric, but not fascist policy.
I
If he
mean,
used fascist policy, then he probably wouldn't give corporate bailouts to billionaires.
I think corporatism is
No, but
like
corporatism and
we're I don't
fascism.
know.
No,
Do you know
corporatism is
what
not the same as.
corporatism is?
I don't think corporate, many people don't. It's not the same as corporatocracy, which is the word I think that many people are looking for when they try to describe it. Within fascism, it has a more specific meaning. I mean, Pearson obviously knows a lot about this, but
Yeah, I
it's
can
just, it's actually in
explain.
many ways, bro, you know what's funny, Pearson? I think people are fooled by the fact that it has corporatist or
Hmm.
corporatism as the entirety of the title because they think that that means that it's talking about a domination of society. The domination of society by corporations or a situation in which
Yeah.
corporations dominate society. That's not really what it's talking about. It's saying that, I mean, you can expand on this because you definitely know a lot about it as well. But basically, it goes back to Mussolini and some of the thinkers that he took inspiration from. I'm pretty sure even early fascist philosophers like Gentile probably hinted at this, but it just says that so any type of organized entity within society, which you could say that a corporation is one form or manifestation of, sure, but there are many other forms of it. There are trade guilds,
Mhm.
trade unions, labor unions, and so on and so forth. Any organized unit, social unit, should actually be converged and coalesced or funneled into a higher totality that actually suits and serves the ends of the betterment of society. So you have all of these units that are working together. So the idea is literally the opposite of what Trump's doing right now, because the
Yeah.
corporations will be more subservient to the good of society. They would have to
Hmm.
work for whatever the totality of the social organism actually wants. And you know what, Pearson, I think, man, there's a lot. China's a really fascinating rabbit hole. Contemporary China, the
Hmm.
CCP, what they've been trying to do, Jinping. We can definitely talk about. I don't even know if we'll have enough time to touch on all of it, but I do think that they're actually trying to at least approximate that type of corporate model, and I think that that's why
Yeah.
they're more successful in certain areas. I mean, maybe not in every area, but there are some aspects of their society that we should probably try to emulate. I mean, obviously not all of it, but yeah, corporatism and corporatocracy are not the same thing at all. They're completely different. I
Yeah.
think that's the bottom line. And I agree
Yeah.
with
So
Lucy's assessment.
basically,
So yeah, go ahead, bro. Yeah.
basically, corporatism, in the Italian sense, corporate corporation in Italian literally means like a trade union. So how corporatism functions is the state pretty much takes control of all the businesses and runs them like a trade union would run the business. That's fairly. I know Jordan just mentioned Xi Jinping. I think
Mhm.
like Dangism and Xi Jinping thought is like um, the closest to actual um, like there were it's hard to explain. It's hard to explain, but Giovanni Gentile comes from Marxism. His actual goal in fascism, as well as Georges Sorel, who is the progenitor of fascism, if you're
Yeah.
familiar, who was actually an anarchist, a Proudhonian anarchist who was influenced by Marx, and also dipped his toe into race realism um, and nationalism and such things. So their theory is pretty much the way we get to um, kind of what Marx described as like a socialist or communist society is actually through we need to develop it through capitalistic means that are controlled like a death grip by the state. That's kind of what Xi Jinping is doing. That's what Deng is doing. Deng was doing. And so I think Xi Jinping has had like um, the most successful and the most viable interpretation of fascism, even unintentionally, because their state has survived through it. They haven't, gotten into any like retarded wars over land disputes or colonialism, although they're hinting that they're going to do that with Taiwan. Um,
Yeah,
that's why I pretty much described myself as having relations to Dangism or Xi Jinping thought at the beginning of the podcast, is because if I say I'm a fascist, then that kind of most people are gonna understand that as I believe in like authoritarianism for the sake of authoritarianism, or like ridiculous racial policies or anything like that. When I
yeah.
really, what I'm really advocating for is like the abolition of private property and things like that. I'm not
I believe in that as
advocating
well, yeah.
for and for things like dialectical materialism within um, a less of a culturally left wing stance and more of a race realist stance, but still with the end goal of the abolition of private property and the communal
Mhm.
state and the
Yeah.
disintegration of the state. I think is something that will eventually happen over like thousands of years, but I don't think it's
Disintegration of the state.
disintegration of the state. So basically, the point in history where a state becomes essentially irrelevant. I think it'll remain as like a tradition to have a state, but I don't
Well,
think it's going to become
when you say
essential.
state, do you mean like an organized government that taxes
Yes.
citizens? Like,
Well, in Marxism,
I
state has
mean,
a specific
I
definition.
guess practically, then how would you provide public goods?
I mean,
Like,
humans didn't use states for a long time. I
not
mean, for
very
many,
long
for
at all,
thousands
to
of
be
years prior
honest.
to the,
For
yeah,
thousands of years
prior
when
to,
we had tribes, but as soon as we had like organized like societies with like, you know, populations over 10,000 in one place, we had states immediately. Like
Mhm.
immediately. Like taxes and states have been around since the beginning of time. So I
there
Yeah,
are
I mean,
different ways to respond. I mean, I'm not even, yeah, go ahead, Pearson. There's a lot I can
I
say
don't
though.
think I don't think the state is going to reach a point where it ceases to exist as an entity, but I think it is going to reach a point where it is essentially irrelevant, um, because of the amount of
what
A,
part
technological process, and B, communitarianism,
so technological
mutual aid, and such things.
processes, so people just help each other out and public goods are provided by the community for the sake of community.
Yes, I think that
I mean,
will
that's a
eventually
classic
happen.
anarchist
Then
type
but I
idea,
guess
yeah.
that why hasn't that happened yet?
Let me
Because
get
we're
a
not
book that shows
technologically
this, yeah.
developed enough.
So it's our lack of technology that makes it impossible
To
for
an
that
extent,
to,
and also,
yeah.
well, it's the lack of production. The more production you have, which is why actually Marx advocates for capitalism before socialism,
But then I
before
guess like if
communism,
who
is
would
we need to have enough production so it's sustainable for the, the populace to exist off.
I mean, to get back
And it's
to
not
well,
Brett's
I
that's
mean,
what
point
it
if
is.
look, if
also.
you, I guess if you're talking, look, I guess if you're saying, right, that technological progress will cause the community, right, to provide public goods for the community, right,
Mhm.
then you're just left with the question, right, where will the funding for that technological process come from, right, the community, right,
Mhm.
and so the community funds technological progress, right, and so how do you decide on that funding, right? Maybe you look at people's income brackets, right? And make sure people have an equal share of what they contribute based on what they make each year, right?
Mhm.
You agree, right?
Yeah.
That those are taxes, that's the state. Like
Yeah.
that's how it works. So you would
But
still
I believe
have
that'll
a
eventually
state.
become socially enforced by actually, this is kind of something that's a fascist concept, is the state becoming so big that it ceases to exist in a weird way. Because if everybody's involved in the state, then it just becomes a community.
That's just how it is.
Yeah.
Okay. It's yeah, I see what you
You
mean.
know, actually,
That's
I
like
just,
So
e pluribus
it
unum.
doesn't
If you're
it
like, it's like
doesn't
the
cease
American
to
founding.
exist. It's in the background. You just don't think about it.
now
Well,
that
it's
I
not.
mentioned it, actually, I literally,
Like what, but you know
I
what I
have a
mean.
text, I think, that has the answer to some of your questions. Yeah, are you
On
guys familiar
Conquest of
with this
Bread.
one?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, just because now that we're talking about this, it literally reminded me that I have this book. I didn't even realize that's in my room, but
It's a
this,
good book, except
yeah,
for
no, this is actually, I think I got this at a bookstore.
a lot of
But,
conclusions people reach from it are fucking stupid though, I think.
yeah. I think, well, BreadTube, yeah, of course,
Yeah.
BreadTube and all that shit. You know what's funny, bro, is that none of the people in BreadTube really understand these types of ideas. You know what I'm saying? I've
Yeah.
never heard them even talk about it. And when they
They're
do, it's
just
just
like,
in this super shallow, completely watered down version that doesn't actually go into any detail. I fucking,
yeah,
bro, I fucking hate BreadTube. It's just so
they actually
bro,
believe the shit from like Umberto Eco and stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, there's just so many problems. I used to love all of those guys though, bro. H Bomber guy, Sean, ContraPoint, all of those types of YouTubers I used to like when I was really deep into just entry level leftism, but I really just moved beyond it because I
We need
realized
a
it was so lackluster.
we need a
And
pod dunking on Antonio Gramsci. That's what we need.
yeah,
The only
Gramsci's
one that
fucking annoying. Yeah, go ahead. I think
the only
Gramsci's
one I
pretty
think
fucking ass. Yeah.
actually made good videos on BreadTube was Hakim.
Hakeem, dude,
Yeah.
Yeah,
yo,
dude.
He
Yeah.
made
that's my
good
fucking
videos. I mean,
man. That's my
here's the
fucking
thing,
man. Hakeem. Yeah,
like,
it's more like Hakeem, I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
Hakeem.
He's from Iraq. Yeah, he's
fucking,
fucking sick. Yeah.
you know who's like the best of the whole internet left wing, but is also like fucking retarded at the same time.
Mr.
Haas.
Maupin.
Haas.
Oh,
No,
oh,
dude,
huh?
I met Caleb Maupin. I fucking met Caleb Maupin,
Dude,
and I didn't know like the fucking meeting that we had with him was so fucking awkward. They had
dude,
like
bro,
this
send the picture
terrible
to
fucking
chat because Rafa
no.
hasn't seen the picture, bro. It's
It's
fucking
really
hilarious. You're just
dude.
standing
Caleb
next to
Maupin.
Caleb Maupin. He's like, bro, but he's shorter than he was just.
Yeah,
He has this blank
yeah.
stare, dude.
I
He
don't.
looks so fucking. Bro, why does he look so fucking awkward at all times?
I don't
I've
know.
never seen him just chill. He's just super stressed and stuff.
He has a
It's because
spanking
from getting,
fetish.
yeah, because he's been spanked too many times, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Have you seen like the debate he had with Cultured Thug, who's a fucking idiot, by the way. I don't like Cultured Thug. I
Oh,
think he's
dude, I
retarded.
actually, bro, you know
But
what's funny?
like,
I see Cultured Thug's name pop up all the time just from hanging out in
yeah,
spaces like watching Destiny and shit like that. And bro, he seems like one of those guys who desperately pretty much sucks up to other people and constantly spams them because he wants to be seen, but he's actually irrelevant. You know that type of
yeah.
guy online, like the fucking reply guys and shit. Bro,
Oh yeah, dude.
he's always seemed like that to me. Because I always see him adding people on Twitter saying, bro, debate me, bro. And he gets mad at people if they won't do it, but everyone's like, bro, no one knows who you fucking are. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like his arguments are
Yeah.
just bad.
He's
He doesn't
basically
advocate for third position in a smart way. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
he's
But yeah.
basically a idiot who read a lot of books. Um, he's not a smart guy. He's an alcoholic and he fucking beats his wife. His organization, New Frontier, completely like imploded on himself because he fucking stole money from the organization and then did a bunch of dumb shit with it. And the other guy that he was in the call with, his name was like Deebs or whatever. Guess what? Deebs also fucking stole money from New Frontier, and guess what he did with it?
What?
I fucking forget the name of like the practitioner, but it's like those things where like they go into a room and like a woman like ties them up and like stretches them out and like whips them and shit. Except he went to a
Oh,
transgender one.
dominatrix.
Yes,
So
yes, he went
Yeah,
to
I
a
would
he
know.
spent
Yeah,
he spent
definitely.
the funds from New Frontier on a transgender dominatrix. That's a true
Oh,
story.
bro, are you serious?
Yeah.
What the fuck? So is it like BDSM? Is that what it is to
Yeah,
It's
get you
some weird
that's what it
shit
is.
like that.
They like tie you
some
up and
fetish?
like spank you.
So it's some
Yeah.
fetish shit, and she was transgender as well.
Yeah.
Then they like wear latex and like cat ears. Yeah.
Bro,
Yeah.
my question is, who was dumb and gullible enough to give him money in the first place? You know,
Dude, he's a
that's the real.
convicted felon.
Oh,
He was in prison for like a long ass time. The reason he became based was he was in prison for a long time and he read Mein Kampf and he was like, oh shit, this is based, bro.
but
He's a fucking idiot.
that's not a very Wojcicki friendly clip in the podcast.
And um yeah, he said actually no, I won't get into that. I don't want to legally endanger him.
Yeah, but no, you were saying so he debated Caleb Moffitt.
Yes, he debated Caleb Maupin, and Caleb Maupin had like a soy fit in it, and he was like, "No, I because fascism is when capitalism in decay." It's like that's
Bro,
not
he
even
always,
fuck.
dude,
Yeah,
to be honest, bro, I have such a past Caleb Maupin because I watched him, dude, man, such a fucking story. I've been watching him since probably 2019, bro. I mean, I've
yeah,
been in deep with Caleb Maupin, Kent Mop the Maupin and shit like that. But dude, there's so many fucking slogans about him. But I feel like he's almost self-defeating in a way because he just doesn't really know how to present himself. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
And he
Mhm.
always falls back on those weird slogans that people just don't take seriously. Bro, the fascism is capitalism in crisis or capitalism in decay. I swear he's repeated that 500 times at the point. It's basically a chant. And then we're gonna fight for working families. He has bro, he has all these fucking slogans. But I think deep down, don't you think he's probably a good guy? I mean, or he
Yeah,
seems
he's
like
a
he's
good
that,
guy,
yeah, he seems
but
like honest.
actually,
He's not a bread tuber
I
piece
don't,
of shit.
I,
Yeah.
I don't know because I know he did spend funds for the CPI on like hookers.
Are you serious,
That's
bro?
that's what
Dude,
made me think about Cultured Thug. is the fact that
Wait,
Caleb Maupin spent funds on fucking hookers that were supposed to go to his organization. And his organization is pretty much like a bunch of fucking North Korean spies.
dude, have you seen the videos of the CPI meetups? It's insane,
Yes,
bro. It's some rough
that's
type of shit.
that's what I went to.
Oh, you
I
went
went
to a
to one of them.
CPI meetup?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, it was
in
fucking funny.
Virginia. In Virginia,
Yeah,
right?
Whoever keeps requesting AI companion, I'm not gonna do it because the previous guest will be able to see what we're talking about, so I'm not gonna do that.
what?
Dude, bro, Pearson, I would have gone with you to
Okay.
CPI, man, in Virginia.
Um,
That's fucking hilarious. We
guys,
should have trolled him to an extent,
I,
not too over the top, but we should have just done one little funny maneuver, some type
Yeah,
of reference. But dude, at the same time, and I haven't watched that debate with Cultured Thug. I don't know what happens in it, but I've seen most of the debates, and he's not that strong of a debater. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? I feel like, and other people could argue for his positions more effectively than he does. But anyways, there's a lot to say when it comes to Mop, and I think he's relatively effective rhetorician in some respects. I mean, he knows how to conduct polemics by himself when he's actually prepared them ahead of time, but he's not that fast on his feet, which I think is terrible, absolutely terrible within the context of debating. And have you seen him debate Destiny? That was many
no,
years ago,
I loved when I
2019.
debated
I listened to
Destiny.
your
That was the
Destiny
best
debate,
person that ever
Jordan.
debated Destiny, me.
Yeah, Jake, I can't believe we made it that far. That's hilarious, man. I actually, you know what? I like Destiny in many ways. I mean, he has,
I don't.
bro. No,
I
it's not.
do
It's
in
not
many
just
ways.
about.
I do in
It's
many
not
ways.
about agreeing with him on every issue. It's just more so that, and as pathetic as it sounds, he played a very important role in actually shaping pretty much my early teenage life. And it was really parasocial type of shit, bro. No, it sounds really creepy, but literally, I would just
Yeah, and you
constantly.
had the opportunity to debate him with me, and you were just
Yeah.
like, "Oh no,
No,
I'm
because
busy."
I was in a different state with Flying Cabal, actually. I was in Washington.
Oh,
And
okay.
he was preparing questions for him about Israel Palestine and these types of issues because he's really passionate about that. And Destiny has a pretty weird stance on Israel. I think he's made some
Yeah.
really dumb arguments. I don't know, maybe he's just afraid of losing sponsorships and shit. Which is weird though, because in 2020 he said mow them all down. I don't give a fuck about their lives. Bro, do you
I
remember
mean, he went to
Yeah,
Israel and he
after
The
like debated.
Israelis or the
He debated
Palestinians?
against like
after
one of the modem down guys. Like he was debating against like one of the rabbi
no,
adjacent
no, I'm talking about what happened
people.
after the Kyle Rittenhouse shootings. Because remember, no, there was I think Patreon actually blacklisted him and he was kicked
Oh,
off of
okay. I didn't
of
know
the
about
fund.
that.
No,
No,
he
but
was
all
kicked
I know
off of
he was arguing
yeah,
against like the Zionist rabbis in Israel when he
yeah, no,
visited.
because he was kicked off of the funding list after he
And they
said
all had like
about the
Brooklyn accents. It's
yeah,
so
he said
funny.
about the anti-Kyle protesters, or no, he said about BLM protesters, mow them down. I don't give a fuck about their lives. Like as in, bro, he didn't say that.
yeah,
It was as
that's
if he was saying
based.
that.
That's
No,
based.
bro, he was saying that they should be killed or something. No, he said
Yeah,
he wouldn't care if someone shot them, and it was
Yeah,
controversial
they
stuff.
would ban him for that. Yeah, makes
Yeah,
sense.
so he did get blacklisted periodically, which is weird because I don't, he's more of a mainstream liberal guy and he has huge connections to the mainstream. But at the same time, I respect him for being honest and authentic. I do think that he's pretty authentic, to be honest. I mean,
He
I feel like
is.
he has his views and he doesn't really allow them to deviate on the basis of trends because his stances just haven't changed since he started debating people in 2016, since the legendary debate with JonTron. But I mean, what do you guys think? Destiny again,
oh,
another
the
huge
JonTron.
JonTron shit. Yeah, that's such a deep cut. Yeah, it's what made him famous in debating. But what do you guys think of
Yeah,
Destiny? Oh, there's so
I
much
think
to
he's a
talk about when it comes to him, bro.
fucking idiot. I don't like. He didn't know who Marcus Aurelius was. He doesn't know where fucking Israel is on a map. He didn't
He's
know who
Yeah,
been to
Francisco
Israel,
Franco
bro.
was.
He's literally been to Israel.
Yes, but he didn't know where it was on a map.
no,
Or
to
was
us
it
is not.
Ukraine?
It's
I don't think he
crazy.
knew where Ukraine was on a map.
Nah, bro.
It's one of
No, you
those.
know what's funny? It's because now he's been switching into the foreign. I mean, he's talked about foreign policy at times in the past, but he's really been forced to actually just make a hard turn towards that direction and to really focus on it exclusively. And he's revealing his lack of knowledge about these topics because he doesn't know shit about the geography of the Middle East, bro.
Anyway,
He didn't know where Egypt was in relation to Syria. He said Syria
I
bordered
think,
Russia or some dumb shit like that. Just really basic mistakes. He had no idea what
yeah,
he was talking about. Yeah.
yeah.
I agree with you about that.
Anyway, that's
But
got me thinking of something. I think this is where
yeah.
we can start another debate. What do you guys think about? Do you guys support Ukraine or Russia?
Oh fuck.
I
Actually, I'm
would
gonna let
say
you guys go
Ukraine.
first. Because Pearson just said he supports Russia.
Russia?
Yeah,
Yeah,
he said that earlier.
You know what? Yeah, let's. Can we hear Pearson out?
Okay, here's why.
I actually have to go, but now I'm interested. That actually took me back
So,
in. All right.
Raphael, do you support Ukraine?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's why. Basically, I'm arguing from the standpoint of an American who's concerned about the direction of my country, not about the direction of any other country, really. So, yes, I think that technically Ukraine is kind of in the right. I don't think Russia has a right to Ukraine's land, but I think I support Russia winning, and here's why: is because Russia winning that war will decrease the amount of hegemony that the United States has, right? A lot of people who are kind of on my end of politics want Ukraine to win for the reason of, when they lose, when Russia loses, then Ukraine will be weak enough for something like Azov Battalion to take over. I don't think that's going to happen. I
That's
think if Azov
that's
Battalion takes over, the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to get cooed because people in the world, when US controls hegemony, people get cooed for far less than what Azov Battalion would be doing. Gaddafi got cooed for basically no fucking reason. They cooed Ukraine in 2013. They cooed Ukraine in 2013 over like corruption. You don't think they're going to coup it when it becomes like a national socialist militia state? They're absolutely going to coup it instantly. And what's going to happen is that that's going to set the precedent that um, governments cannot rebel against like the neoliberal world order. What is going to happen if Russia wins is Russia and China and Iran are going to take on more global hegemony, and they're going to have more of an influence on American politics. If the American government is weakened, then that gives us room to fix things in America. And when we fix things in America, who do you think is going to support us? It's going to be Russia, Iran, and China, right? Because
That sounds
China
very
supports
accelerationist of you.
it is, but
Yeah.
who does China support? China supports other Marxist Leninist countries. China doesn't care about like the stances they don't care about any socially conservative stuff. They do things that are way worse to their own people, like way more socially conservative. China right now is literally an ethno state that is committing like a genocide, and that's the genocide is fucking horrible. But they
talking about
will
the
not have any
Uyghurs.
moral reservations about expelling people from America. Russia, you look at Russia, they support Syria, they support Iran, they support all these states. However, they don't interfere with Israel because for some reason they want to be on Israel's good side because I guess Samson option or something. And then Iran. So these three countries will probably support the kind of government that I would support taking over America, right? Whereas Ukraine, all that's going to happen is it's going to beat those countries back and give um, my position in America less bargaining power. That's basically my position.
I mean, I think it's all objectively true. It just matters on what you value most. Because I mean, it's just a very, very utilitarian argument, right? Like it would put us in a
Mm-hmm.
better position. It would be better for the American citizen. It would the global balance of power would shift in a way that helps us. But, you know, this people in Ukraine would not feel the same way. You know, it's objectively bad for them. It's objectively bad for their relationship with Russia. Um, and I guess I mean the thing is I'm like I have a lot of family there. Like
Yeah, I have
I'm way
family
too
in
personally
Ukraine.
tied into it. Yeah, like I like my grandma grew up in Ukraine, so I can't possibly say, right? I can't be utilitarian about it, right? Because there's times when you can be utilitarian. In your case, it's understandable, right? But utilitarianism
Mm-hmm.
can be like just complete evil if you kind of value it over all other kind of moral senses, in which case I have some. So yeah, it's just I mean, if I
Yeah.
Well,
wasn't
then I
tied
mean,
into it, I'd agree with you. Which I do
well, I guess,
actually, I do agree with you,
well, the
but I
question
just
is for
can't.
Rafa is, I have my opinions, but the question for Rafa is, so why do you think that either, okay, the invasion itself is wrong, Russia's in the wrong, Ukraine is the faction you support, and then two, relatedly, why do you think that Pearson's wrong about
I
this? If
don't
you,
think that Pearson's wrong. I don't think that Pearson is right. Like with that, It's
within
just
a
all
framework.
strategic, right? No, like not
Yeah.
within any framework. That is what would happen, right? Like
Hmm.
that is what would happen, and in the ways that, like in what you value, Pearson, that would benefit you, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, there's nothing wrong about what you just said, right? And if that's what you value, right, that's what you want to happen, obviously, right? I value different things. So
Yeah, I get it.
and mine are much more simple because I have family there, and I've been kind of like personally, and like I like half my family's Russian, right?
Hmm.
Like I speak Russian. I have like a huge Russian community in LA, right? Like everyone, my grandma's from Ukraine, she grew up in a village there, right? I've grown up like learning about Putin and like seeing
Yeah,
Zelensky
Putin's
get
really a
elected. So
piece
I'm
of
just
shit. I really don't like him.
yeah, and the entire like Putin's invasion of Ukraine was a massive blunder, right? He didn't
Hmm.
expect this response. He didn't expect it to go on for 5 years, right? He didn't think America would like send $50 billion to Ukraine or whatever, and it'd be just such a fucking huge pain in the ass for him. Like he just got way too cocky. I think for many years actually after it happened, I tried to find a way that would kind of rationalize it, and I started thinking that Putin's playing some sort of like 4D chess game, depending on he was thinking that Trump is going to get elected in 2024 and he would actually come out with the advantage, right? But the amount of like global backlash, economic backlash that that's had on Russia as a country is just the cost greatly outweighs the benefit. And for what, right? You get like
Hmm.
two territories in Ukraine. Like, what's that going to do for you, right? Like, you've killed like 500,000 of your own men, like there's
Yeah.
huge division in your country. It's a
Well,
terrible
didn't
move.
he say that he wants to push westward and then maybe use that as a starting point from
Yeah,
which he can conquer other territories? So
yeah,
I don't support his, I
he
don't
just
support the
wants to see
invasion,
the
but I don't know if
greater
it's
USSR again. He
I don't know
got
if he
into this
supports
like
the yeah, sorry, I don't
uh,
support the invasion, but I don't necessarily think that I wouldn't quite say that the claim that he only wants those two territories is an accurate one. I don't know if
no,
it's
no,
just those two. It might
but
even be
that's what
more
I'm saying.
expansive
It's
than that.
like if he
Yeah.
doesn't want more than those two territories, that's even worse because then he's motivated by some like weird Alexander the Great vision, right? Where he takes over Ukraine, he takes over all the like former USSR countries, right? That's not going to happen. We live in a different system now, right? It's a case, like many others of a man who's been in power for too long and is starting to use it, right? His like it's having effects on his mental health and his decision making, right? Like it would on anyone. Um, but regardless of that, right, and regardless of the outcome that his gain of that territory would have on our position, I cannot possibly be in favor of it because it would have horrible kind of ripple effects on people I care about, on a country I care about, on something I'm personally invested in, right? So I just can't do it. I can't think in a utilitarian way because I just don't find it right.
Well, I mean, why do you guys, I think a more fundamental question too is why do you think that Putin even invaded in the first place? I feel like people sidestep that question, but we should really try to interrogate it and dive Pierce to the bottom. There
I
was
think
definitely
they
a
were trying
context
to
within
join
which
NATO.
there
I
was a
think,
context within which the invasion was embedded.
Yeah,
I think
he
that's what
he was scared that
yeah,
they were going
sorry.
to join NATO.
You think that's basically the fundamental reason?
I
yeah,
really struggle here, right? Because there's two ways you can look at it. Either he made a mistake, right? Or there's been some sort of grand plan, right? And it's just he made a mistake, right? He got scared of them joining NATO, combined with his really, really flawed ego. It caused him to make a decision that was just ultimately, just a failure. I I think it's really difficult to try to find kind of a rational strategic explanation for why he invaded because there might not be one, but I don't know.
You think there
yeah.
might not be a
Well,
rational? Yeah, sorry, go ahead,
Yeah.
yeah.
Pearson. Yeah.
I think throughout history, there is kind of a theme of people competing for. I think, frankly, he wanted some kind of natural resource that's part of it, and also to deter NATO. Do you know anything about the natural resources in Ukraine, Raphael?
Um, yeah. Are you talking about agriculture or something else?
Anything? Because I
I
know
wouldn't,
the land is more fertile there. Russia is
Yeah, I
in a
mean,
complete shit
was it
economy.
it's grain, I think, something like
Yeah.
wheat. Ukraine provides like fucking 80% of the world's wheat or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he wanted that.
Yeah, I think that was part of it, and then also fears of NATO.
Yeah. And see, those are two very bad reasons to invade a country.
I mean, they're kind
Horrible.
of you can understand where it's coming from though. I don't support it. I think it's fucking stupid.
You
But
can
I
understand
mean,
where it's coming from in the way like you can understand why a toddler threw a tantrum and like broke half the shit in the house, right? It's not rational, right? There's reasoning, right? He didn't do it because he just decided to, but it it was a bad move. I think with everyone, right, when they talk about this conflict, they try to look for a good reason why he invaded, right? Why did he do this? What is your master plan, right? And I mean, on my part, I was like, well, he knew Trump was going to get elected, right? He bet that he was going to get elected in 2024 and that would come out in his favor, right? But
yeah. Okay.
hey,
One thing before you go, Raphael. So I think this entire conversation has been you coming from a more moralistic standpoint and me coming from a more utilitarian standpoint this whole time since we started this conversation like 2 hours ago. So,
yeah,
um, where, what is your issue with utilitarianism and where do you derive your morals from?
That was what I was trying to get
I
at earlier with defining morality and the good. I mean, what's a good in existence, basically?
yeah,
I think that's the
I
first
just
question you have to ask as humans.
I think that until you have a kind of diff I don't know, it's a difficult question. I just think that you cannot you can have deontology like a kind of moralistic ethical framework and make your decisions off of that as a society, right? Without having a utilitarian kind of without leaning towards utilitarianism, and things would be better, right, than the opposite, where you have a purely utilitarian framework without any moralism, right? I think that
Mm-hmm.
like your moral values should always come first, right? And any utilitarian decision making should always be made in the lens of a moral framework. Because if you're making utilitarian decisions without any moral framework, then you can end up hurting a lot of people, and eventually it comes back to you, right? Like what's good about like people having a common moral framework is that um you can trust people, right, to make decisions, right, that don't negatively affect you personally, right? But when everyone's going around making utilitarian decisions, right, it helps like independent nations, independent individuals in the short term, right? But eventually you allow other people to also make utilitarian decisions which eventually affect you, right? I think it's just like it's a short term, long term thing. Utilitarianism in the short term is great because it allows people to make much quicker progress, right, at the cost of others, which will eventually get back to you. So yeah, I just think like that the ontological way of thinking should always come first, I guess.
Okay.
I have a point here to make, but I mean, Pearson, if you want to go first, go. I think
I
this is
mean,
really where it all goes back to. It just goes back to morality. Like it's a topic you
yeah.
No,
can
it's
never really
always
escape. And that's why I
So
think. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
I think what Raphael is saying is that without morality, geopolitics and societies, um, well, societies and the world as a whole will devolve into chaos because there's no limit to, I guess, what they're willing to do to achieve their ambitions.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, of course. I
Um,
mean,
well, I think that frankly, most places are almost uh, utilitarian in almost every way except for us. Frankly, I think America and the and Europe and Canada are pretty much the only ones that don't function off of utilitarianism to some extent. And I think that's why we are, and as the people that control global hegemony all money in the world is based off the dollar, right? So we control hegemony. If we are the ones to not be utilitarian, then that fucks everybody up, and they start using us as a parasite, and then it starts like running out of blood, basically, is what I think is happening right now, because the entire world, like you look at the Great Depression or 2007, those were global financial crises because we were, more moralistic with our economics. We were more, we were less utilitarian as far as inflation, right? We wanted to help more people and everything like that. And because of that, it kind of destroyed um, destroyed everything, because if we collapse, then the entire world pretty much collapses.
Yeah.
I don't
But
I don't
I
know if I'd
mean,
agree
do
about
you,
the Great
So
Recession and the cause of that
like
though. But
America, if America and Europe,
deontological practices caused the 08 recession?
financial
I,
practices,
yeah, but I
Like
think that's actually that
like Keynesian
if anything
economics, like
that legitimates
no,
Roth's position though. I think that what happened was that greed actually got out of control and financial rapaciousness got out of
yeah,
control. I mean, that's
yeah.
what led to a weight. You could combat that
that's
with a more
not
moralistic framework.
utilitarian. Things going out of control is when they cease to be utilitarian and they start to be like a selfish, they start to be moralistic, but they start to be like a selfish morality instead of a utilitarian morality, or
I
a
don't, is a selfish
universalist
morality even a
morality.
Well,
morality though?
it's
I
interesting
don't get
Yes,
actually,
it
that
because
is.
I
either.
think that's kind of like when you get into selfishness, then you get into something that's neither. That's pure kind of that's greed. I
Mhm.
think it's a utilitarianism focused on the individual, and that's the worst one because
Yeah.
utilitarianism is always it's kind of like a max number happiness, right? Is best, right?
Mhm.
5,000 people sad versus 10,000 people happy, good, right? Moralism, right, is like, well, if 5,000 people are sad, whatever, right? Like, but then there's utilitarianism, right? You kind of take away the numbers, right? You do not understand anybody else's happiness, right? It's utilitarian in the sense that whatever is best for me is worth it, right? Like I will do whatever it takes to guarantee a good life for myself and the people I care about, right? And
Yes.
it becomes very tribal, right? So I think utilitarianism is like more, you cannot do that with Dentology, right? Dentology is it's not rooted in individuals or in population sizes or numbers, right? It's rooted in law, right? It's codified. Utilitarianism can be interpreted though, and it can
Mhm.
be kind of taken taken in the wrong sense and applied to simply the individual, and that's what happens in 08, right?
Mhm.
Like I think a good example then is it's like murderers and psychopaths, right? Like they're still functioning under some, it's definitely not Dentology, right? They're still functioning under some like utilitarian notion because they're doing what they find more pleasurable for them at the cost of another individual, right?
Yeah, but that's actually against utilitarianism or against the classical conceptions. Because when I think about
That's
utilitarianism,
what I mean.
I think
That's
about
what I
18th
mean.
century. I think about later on the 19th century people like Mill. But if you go back to Jeremy Bentham, he was really the godfather of this entire term. He says in his writings and in his books that moral considerations have to be considerations of questions that impact the well-being of all people or all sentient beings. He was actually pretty radical for his time, not just any given individual. Because what he's saying is, and I actually agree with this. I like this approach. That's why I don't think that a very radical moralism and also a type of altruism, a very selfless altruism, are necessarily at odds. And I wouldn't outright call myself a utilitarian. I was definitely attracted to that in the past when I was much, much younger. And my views, I think, were less mature in some sense, 12, 13 years old. I thought that that would provide a solution, not just to political problems, but to basically all problems, any problem that someone could face in their own life, that society could face, and so on and so forth. But I do think that some of the core ideas that it centers on about the nature of well-being, the nature of goodness, about what's good in the first place and how we realize that in the world are pretty valuable, or at least they contain the seeds from which value sprouts, intellectual value sprouts. And I think one key idea is that, okay, if you think about any given person, and if you believe in the validity of a type of psychological hedonism, which is that people are primarily motivated by the pursuit of pleasure and the minimization of pain, which I think is actually pretty accurate, to be honest. I mean, I used to disagree with that at some points in my life, Now I think it makes sense. I'd like to hear what you guys think about that. Then you realize that, okay, well, I'm not the only person who exists. And these same bases for my actions and my decision making only even exist insofar as they're also embedded within the broader world around me. They're made possible by the conditions of the world around me. And tons of other people have to navigate that same world. They have to navigate those same conditions, and they're probably governed by very similar motives. So, and even thinking about your own well-being and the pursuit of your own well-being, in order to be consistent utilitarian, you have to suppose that the well-being of other people also matters because their experiences, while not identical to, are fundamentally equivalent to yours on a deep, deep level. And that's why I'm an altruist in some sense. I think that that should be that is one of the highest ends of life. I don't think that it conflicts with utilitarianism or even really with hedonism. Actually, I don't think that hedonism is as bad as it's oftentimes made to be. I mean, I think that it has its limits, but an Epicurean type of hedonism, with respect to the thinker Epicurus, who I've taken a lot from over the years, which states that we should try to pursue some type of peace and tranquility in life, a freedom from suffering and stress, which is also found in Buddhism in some extent. I think it's pretty valid. I think that's actually probably what we should be striving for in pretty much any domain of life. So, I mean, what do
Yeah,
you
I pretty
guys think
much
about all of
agree
that?
with Jordan. I mean, I guess I misspoke earlier. I kind of just threw in '08 because I was thinking about the Great Depression where it was they kept, ramping up the speculation and then it turned out to like completely evaporate and like cause a Great Depression. But I guess a more
Yeah.
accurate way of describing me and Raphael's disagreement is the utilitarianism that I support is a selfish utilitarianism only because it's what helps me will help my fellow countrymen, right? So I feel like things like what Putin did to some extent was not utilitarian because it did not succeed. It failed as a whole entire country.
It was
Like what we
definitely
were
not
getting,
utilitarian.
yeah, it was selfish. Like what happened with, the '08 was caused by selfishness rather than, national um utilitarianism. National utilitarianism and altruism to some extent are the same thing, except for um, it, like the limits. If you're an altruist, then you are essentially a utilitarian for the entire world. If you're selfish, you're a utilitarian for yourself. If you're a nationalist, you're a utilitarian for your nation.
Agree.
So
Yeah. I mean,
um,
yeah, I see what you're saying. You
things
know, I think
like
the most,
things
yeah,
like
sorry.
the expansion of Germany into Russia, things like that, where they just tried to overexpand. That is not at all um, utilitarian in the sense that I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is for what helps the people instead of helping billionaires, instead of helping, a certain group of people that, might not like Palestinians that much, instead of helping like these special interest groups. What I say as far as to utilitarianism, when I say utilitarianism, that's what I'm referring to. It's the utility of the nation. Because to be honest, Max Stirner's to some extent is correct that you're doing everything for yourself because that's all that exists to you. Jordan, all that exists to you is yourself. You're perceiving everything through your mind, right? So what makes you happy is what you are going to go for. But being selfish will ultimately make you not happy. You're going to have some guilt if you screw over your fellow countrymen, right? So actually, what is going to give you the most, I guess, hedonistic pleasure is to some extent doing things that are honorable because you like being socially praised for being honorable more than you like being rejected
I
for
like
being
being socially
selfish.
praised for being a good boy.
I liked Stirner more in the past, just because aesthetically he's very cool. The portrait's cool. There's so much fucking lore about him. Some people don't even think he existed. I like that the term spook I always found really funny and
Yeah.
cool. But now that I
Yeah, I
think more
try not to
deeply,
use that. I try not to use that term
yeah,
because people are gonna think I'm saying something else.
yeah. Oh, yeah. No, but the memes around him were very funny back in the day, very influential. And that was an interesting time. But now, if I actually had to think deeply about it on a more mature level, I mean, I definitely have problems with ethical egoism. I don't really think that it makes sense unless
Yeah,
you
I agree.
actually, because I
What
just
I
don't see
agree,
why. I don't see why you wouldn't universalize or extrapolate that notion of well-being onto other people. Because if you think that your well-being matters, and why wouldn't the well-being of other people matter? I mean, because you know what's interesting is that
because they're not you.
people's
Yeah.
specific
Who knows if
preferences
other
might
people exist?
no, people's specific preferences might clash, but I think most of us would agree that the fundamental essences are basically the same. I mean, we are conscious beings. We're experiencing the world through our minds, and we
See,
do
but
have
most,
we
I guess
share a
some people
fundamental
just
desire, I
don't
think.
think that,
So
I
I think you
guess.
have to universalize morality. It can't really be specific to the actions of individuals. If you care about yourself, you have to care about others. I mean, I think it's literally
Yeah,
it's a logical obligation.
Yeah.
That's actually I'm not really a
Hamilton's
Kantian
law.
on I'm not a Kantian on morality. I think the Kant system is pretty far from ideal. But I do think he was pretty smart to talk about universality and to say that or the principle of universalizability rather, to say that okay, when you're considering an action, and if you're considering both the consequences and the basis of the action, so both the consequential side and the deontological side, you have to consider what happened in a world where everyone acted in a similar manner or on that same basis. And if it doesn't work out, it might be a bad idea. So that's why the pursuit of happiness pretty much always wins out. Because even if everyone's doing that, you wouldn't really expect major problems to arise unless the specific means through which we pursue happiness differ from person to person. But to be honest, I don't think that they necessarily have to differ. And I think that if you think that they differ so heavily, you're probably somewhat confused. I mean, I don't want to sound like a complete normie rationalist, but I think the problem is that, and the root that lies at or the problem that lies at the core of many of the world's issues and conflicts is that people just aren't really thinking that rationally. I think rationality is a very, very powerful tool. Not to go full Reddit atheist and shit, but I think it's beautiful. And I think I'm not a Platonist also, but I do really like that Platonic idea that logic might actually be a gateway to this transcendent truth that we can't really access through senses. I'm curious, did you ever stumble on that idea? It could be a gateway to the
Yes.
theory of forms.
He-
So I'm pretty
Here's
sympathetic to that
here's
type of idea. But there's,
Oh,
yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
here's my
Okay,
sorry, can I,
Rafa.
response
wait,
to,
really
I
quickly,
guess.
can I just say, can I just say goodnight to you all?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Good
bye man.
Yeah,
night.
thanks for joining. All right.
You have to
Bye
go.
bye.
Yeah,
All
it's
right,
been
have a good
lovely.
one.
Yeah, let me know about
I'm
the
gonna,
next podcast, Jordan.
yeah,
Nice to meet you.
we should do more
On the
pods
9th.
like this that are just completely improvised. I mean, this was sick. I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there were
yeah,
some
it was a
moments
great
where where it
conversation.
dragged, where we can just cut that out. Um,
Yeah, but it was great. I mean, yeah, thanks
Yeah.
Rob, for coming, man. It's been a while
Yeah,
since we
yeah,
talked.
it was great. Yeah, it's been
All
a
right, peace
good
out. If you're
time.
gonna go,
All
then
right.
yeah, peace out. But oh fuck, you know what I wanted to ask? Oh man, I should have asked this while Rafa was still here because it's so important. But because I have to go as well. I'm trying to get enough sleep.
okay.
But what do you guys think? First of all, we're still recording, right? Because I want this to
Yeah,
be
we're
in.
still
Yeah, okay.
recording.
I think for the last question, because this really sums it up, and I feel like this is what people are basically avoiding in life, which they shouldn't. But it also ties into my period of fascination with the self-improvement YouTubers and all that. You guys know, people like Hamza, those types of YouTubers, because I actually just completely forgot about pretty much all of that. And I have, you know what I'm saying? Can you guys relate to this? I haven't been in that headspace in a long time. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
bro, I need to lock in.
The headspace of
I
following
think it
those
was a
guys,
grift. I think it was all a grift.
Yeah.
the headspace of following those guys and trying to copy everything that they
No,
talk
all of
about.
that was a grift. They were grifters.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not just people like Hamza, it's Jack Denmo who recently moved to that scene, and there are many other guys like this.
He got arrested and is in jail for like rape.
Jack Denmo.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
You're
He got
kidding.
charged with rape and now he's serving like
You're
I think he's serving
joking.
5 years. I'm not
You're
joking. I
joking.
think he's serving like 5 years in jail. Anyway, what I was trying to respond to Jordan talking about Kant, and I completely disagree that about universal happiness, right? I
Oh
think
my God, he did.
I think Schopenhauer
Wait,
hit it on the head completely.
I think Jacob just
Wait,
Yeah.
I just looked it up.
You can confirm that he was arrested.
Okay. Sorry, because this is important for me.
Okay, yeah.
We know who this guy is. Okay.
Do you know
YouTube
him?
terminates video channels of convicted Hamilton rapist. What is this? A Hamilton YouTuber was sentenced to 3 years behind bars for sexually assaulting a McMaster University student in 2020. What?
Yeah, this is insane.
Oh,
Also,
so
he
you're
did it.
arrested in Canada. Oh no, sex charges dropped against Jack Densmore. Convicted sex offender and former YouTube pickup coach avoids another trial after complainant chooses
No, but
advocacy.
but dude, a more recent one says that YouTube shuts down Hamilton rapist creator. What the fuck? They
YouTuber
didn't
Okay.
even,
Jack
bro, they
Densmore,
didn't even
convicted of
refer to
sexual
him by,
assault, says he's the victim.
they didn't even refer to him
A
by his name.
YouTuber notorious for his videos of drunk university students at homecoming parties has been sentenced to 3 years in prison for sexually assaulting a McMaster University student.
Wait,
The
is that in
story contains
Canada?
a description of graphic assault of a
Is
sexual
that in,
assault.
is that in
A
Canada?
notorious YouTuber
Yes,
sentenced to
that's in
3 years in
Canada.
prison
Oh
for
fuck.
raping. Dude, this is he's cooked. But
he's
no,
Yeah.
cooked.
I'm so confused
No,
because
no, dude, you
our
know,
article that says he was let go is from September, but these articles say that he was convicted for 3 years, like already sentenced.
Okay.
bro, you know it's bad
Anyway,
when the thumbnail is this fucked. It's him in the hoodie looking sad. Hamilton YouTuber sentenced to 3 years for
Yeah, he
sexual
could
assault.
release like a sad rap album.
Yeah, dude,
okay,
I
okay.
had no idea about
Can I
this,
get
Okay,
back to
we're
my
grifting
yeah,
point?
now.
yeah. Sorry.
Okay,
Okay,
go
get
on.
back.
Okay.
Yeah, look, that's
So
crazy.
Jordan was talking about Kant about how we can universally help everybody. I just frankly disagree. Okay. So
Okay.
I feel like everything in life is somewhat, well, not everything, but most things are a zero sum game. Okay.
Okay.
If there's a fucking, this is like very Schopenhauerian, so I might like copy something he said exactly. So if there's like a lion and a gazelle, this is the classic
Yeah, I
example.
know.
If the
Yeah.
lion eats the gazelle loses, but the lion wins. If we're installing financial policy, if we have free healthcare, who wins? The people. Who loses? The healthcare companies. Everybody, either from any decision, everybody either wins or loses, and that's just kind of the way I think it is. I don't think there's like a way that you can help everybody. Even like if you gave everybody free water, then that's fucking over the water company. It's like, oh, the guy who runs the water company's unemployed now, and now he's like
Fair
skipping
enough.
meals. So
Yeah.
So you
I
think
think
it's a
that
zero sum
idea,
game?
well, not
We're just
exactly zero sum. I think, the majority of people who are kind of proletariat, working class people, um, that's the majority of America. And what would help them, and by virtue of that, me, because I'm one of those people, um, is overall morally beneficiary over, it helping some bourgeois businessman. But I only think that because that helps me. If most people were like, if I was a fucking CEO, I would do what helps me because that's what helps me survive, right? Ultimately, this is what I was been getting me at since the beginning of this podcast. When life formed on Earth, there were probably like thousands of times where a single cell organism formed underwater sometime, and it just died because it didn't have the molecules or like the chemical reaction that was correct to reproduce. But ultimately there was one that did reproduce, and so that became the way of almost every organism that was successful since then, right? So if I want to win, if I want to pass on my genes, then I want to win, and I want other people who they might be elites, they might be fucking homeless people. I want them to lose because that's my prerogative. I don't think this humanistic philosophy is really even a thing that you can achieve. Like, even you know who actually is trying to fulfill the actual fruition of these humanistic ideas?
Ooh.
It's like George Soros and Karl Popper. That's who's actually trying to fulfill this like Kantian idea of helping everybody through the open society, and that's going to have disastrous effects. Like, they're going to try to help everybody, and then it's going to end up with like kids being groomed. It's going to end up with stabbings. It's going to end up with like financial crashes, because
Are
that's
you
what
referring to
happens. That's what happens when you try to help everybody.
you're referring to the migrant crises in places like Europe with the grooming gangs and shit like that?
To some extent,
To
that's
some, yeah.
part of it, but
Because I know he
also,
facilitated that through his policies and through the
yeah,
Open
he
Society. So
facilitated that. He facilitated, um, kind of socially progressive views about sex being put into, schools and such. He facilitates like these financial crashes. You know how George Soros made most of his money is
yeah,
by shorting the
shorting the
pound of
currencies of
England.
different. Yeah, I know he
How
was
many
involved in
people,
the.
if
He was
he's so
involved in the. Yeah.
altruistic, then why did he do that?
Yeah, I have mixed views about him. He was also involved in shorting the currency of these Southeast Asian countries in the late
Yeah.
90s. That was another major crisis. But then the British pound, he shorted it and it really screwed over many people. I don't know why he did that. I mean, generally speaking, when it comes to my economic views, they're pretty radical, probably like yours from what I gather. And I'm not going to expand on all of them here because it would take too long. I'm going to head out soon, probably. Maybe 8, 10 minutes left for me. But what I'd say is that I'm generally against financial speculation. You know what I'm saying? And I've
Mhm.
always been against it. Even when I was somewhat perhaps more open to the idea of a market economy, private market as being an efficient means of achieving societal ends. I've always detested the idea itself of financial speculation because I think it's just wasteful labor. It's not even labor, it's just wasteful activity, parasitic activity that benefits shareholders but does nothing to actually help our country in a sense. Those are Eric Stryker's exact words, funny enough. But I think he was right
Mhm.
about that. And in Marxian theory, they have terms like fictitious capital. I think it's a
Mhm.
perfect word to use to actually describe what's going on because they are basically just conjuring money, not just that, but wealth out of thin air while profiting off the activities of others. So I think that's got to go. And I think if a revolution did occur and we seized control of the means of production, the public did, which is what any socialist movement would try to do, that would actually be one of the first social phenomena that would have to go immediately on the way out. So I mean, what do you think of Wall Street and the entire world? I think it's pretty much a cancer, but
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think it's essentially a cancer. I mean, if you're familiar with fractional reserve banking or anything like
yeah,
that, that's all
fractional.
that is a parasitic practice where they can lend out 10 times more than they actually have. So then they can make 10 times the profit. I mean, if like these financial speculators, all they do is essentially function as parasites on the rest of the country, uh, leech off of our, what we find valuable. And then what they do with that is they buy the media, and then the media tells us what to find valuable. So then they have like this infinite loop of speculation, which
Yeah,
they
no, it's
control.
it's fucked, definitely. It's
Actually,
gotta
did you
go.
see some guy? I forget his name. I think it was Larry Ellison. He like bought a bunch of the media companies in America, with Oracle, right? And now, I think like CBS, NBC, a lot of these companies will be headed by Bari Weiss, and he's going to control TikTok. If you see TikTok lately, guess what happened to TikTok?
What happened?
American government bought it, and the American government said we have to sell it to somebody in America because, um, Xi Jinping's CCP, they're using TikTok to push pro-Palestinian sentiment. Basically, it was nothing to do with the pornography that's on the app. It's nothing to do with encouraging drugs or anything like that. It was mainly because of it was stirring up Palestinian sympathies, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And it gets bought by Oracle. And guess who Oracle puts as the moderation team?
Who? Is it some AEL?
Literally, no. They literally employed like 90% Mossad agents to moderate TikTok. I don't think there's a single Gentile that's part of the TikTok moderation team. It's absolutely insane.
Damn. So the main reason as to why they cracked down on it was because people are using it to push pro-Palestinian sentiment.
Yeah, like you
That's
open up
fucked. Yeah.
TikTok and you see a
Yeah,
video
no,
of like
I
a
know what you
baby
mean.
getting blown up. Like what I was talking about earlier. When you see that shit head on, you start to sympathize with it. If it's like not even there, then you'll never even think
Yeah.
about it.
No, I agree with you. Wait, is Jacob still here? Yo, Jacob,
Yeah,
Jesus,
Jacob's still here. He's just
he's
not.
muted.
He's
No, because
just.
I had one question for him too before we left. And I was gonna ask this to Rafa while Rafa was here, but before I leave, the fundamental question is, so okay, when it comes to ethics and metaethics, which I think are extremely important, I mean, what do you guys think morality even is, and where does it come from? I feel like that's
You
really
know.
the basic question. It's the first question that humans have to ask. I mean, what is the good, pretty much?
Do you know what I think about it? I've been talking about it the whole time. Um, I just think
What is
morality
it?
comes from self-interest. Um, I don't think morality is something that God gave us or anything. I just think it's something that we evolved to think in order to have cohesive societies that don't stab each other in the back. Um,
But do you think there's a difference between good and bad? And if so, where does that come from? I
well,
feel like
like
most people
earlier,
do probably. Right?
I was talking about, well, there's things that are good for me and bad for me, right? And we can have sympathy for other people. Like we can say, oh, that's bad because it was bad for him more than it was good for the other guy, or the guy, the second guy, um, intentionally like was sadistic and took, pleasure in the other person's pain. Like you can say that about Israel. That's why I guess Israel's considered bad. That's why I guess cheating is considered bad because you know, if you're part of the cheating is that um to one of the parties or two of the parties involved, um part of the enjoyment of it is from the humiliation of the third party, right? It's like bullying. Bullying is bad because they get enjoyment from the suffering of another. It's sadistic. But I don't think you can classify things as good or bad. I think you can say things are sadistic more but I don't think you can say they're necessarily morally wrong because if something's sadistic, if I'm a sadist, then yeah, I'm going to be ultimately then being sadistic is good for me, right? In my head, it's good because that's just the way it is.
So,
Because
so what you're saying is
I don't
that,
think I don't think morality is universal. Is what I'm
what do
saying.
you mean by that? It's not universal. It's kind of confusing to me.
Well, I think
Uh,
that um, if I'm an individual, there are things that I will view as good, and you're different because you have a different brain. Your brain is made up of different atoms, and you're perceiving things through a different like lens, right? So ultimately, you're going to at least have a slightly different version of what is good and bad than what I have, right? Even if it's just like, I think this thing is really bad, and you think that this thing is like only a little bit bad, even if it's like that, then it's not a universal morality, right? And then you have billions and billions of people. So everything that I said today, there's probably somebody that is in my house right now that would say everything that I said today was fucking evil, right? It's just kind of the way it
no, but
is.
okay, but no, it's because see, this is where I think that we run into major problems if you don't establish some form of objective morality. Is that okay? So suppose that that person now has some type of beef or experiences major tensions with you. That affects your
Mhm.
interpersonal relationships. So that's one problem. But then secondly, suppose that you have a third party who comes in and is forced to decide as to whose beliefs are more true, which is where epistemology comes in. Also as to whose beliefs are more right. So what are they going to do? I mean, how do they have any ground on which to stand?
Well, I don't
See,
think
well,
epistemology and
because
morality are related. I mean, I think they're
I think
related,
they
but
are. I mean, that's also a
I don't think
platonic.
they're intertwined at the hip like a lot of people do.
Oh, well, why is that?
Because I think there are things like noble lies. I think there are, things that you can do that are deceitful that will ultimately benefit. Like this fucking retard Jordan Peterson is like, if I was a heroin addict and my daughter, who's 5 years old, asked me what's heroin like, then I would tell her the truth. and I would say it's the best thing that ever happened to me. No, you wouldn't fucking do that. You wouldn't do that, right? So yeah,
No, but
I
so
don't
okay,
think.
so you disagree with someone else. Okay, but there's 7 billion people on Earth.
Mhm.
Conflicts are constantly occurring, and sometimes they kill people. So you
Yeah,
probably wouldn't want to be killed. Well,
yeah.
how could you not understand that other people don't want to be killed and then start building more of a morality from there? See, I don't understand how
Um,
selfishness works at all. That's why egoism makes no sense to me. Because it
yeah, I'm
only
not a.
it's yeah, so you're not an egoist, but because it supposes that there are aspects of life that matter and ones that don't, but that affects
But
everyone.
why would I not want to be
So
killed? If
I
me
mean, I'm
dying would
assuming.
lead to, if
I mean,
me
I'm assuming
dying
that.
would lead to
I'm
ultimately the
assuming.
fruition of a better ideal, then
No, I'm just
why
saying.
would I not want to die?
I'm assuming that you wouldn't want to be killed, probably right now.
Yes, but if we're
I mean, that's kind of. I know it's kind of a weird ass question.
do you understand what I'm saying? Is like, why would I not want to die
Yeah, well,
if
or
me
another way of
dying
putting
would
it,
lead
why
to
is
a morally superior world, right?
yeah, but so where does morality come from? I mean, what do you think? Because you
Said
definitely
this the
value.
whole fucking time, dude. It
No,
comes
no, no,
from
because you said that you
self-interest.
think it's just evolution, but I don't know. I mean,
Yes.
it doesn't make sense to me though. So you think, but
How does that
so
not make
everyone
sense?
following their own self-interest, you think leads to morality?
Yes, because it everybody is self-interested in a socially cohesive collective.
But what if the self-interest of one person was global annihilation, to kill all people on Earth in a nuclear apocalypse?
Then that then that's their prerogative. I mean,
No,
I
but
don't
then the
think
entire
that's
system collapses. That's what, no, I'm just saying the point is it's an extreme example, but I think there's something more fundamental that explains it better. I don't think it's
well,
that people are
you
following
think that's bad
self-interest.
until you're that person. They have their own reasons and everything to believe that. I mean,
No, they don't. They probably don't have a
definitely
good reason.
it's definitely psychologically it definitely somewhat extends from psychological damage, but you know, if if that person, I mean, how is that more right or wrong than what anyone else? I mean, it's wrong within morality, like social morality, which we do have social moral systems that occur from, you know, humans being social creatures, but that doesn't mean that morality is universal, right?
Bro, what? Wait, are you a
Because
moral nihilist? You
yes,
think,
yes,
oh,
sort of.
fucking hell, bro.
No, no,
I've
listen to me,
debated these
listen to me.
types of guys in the past. I just can't get anywhere. I mean, I feel
Listen
like,
to me.
wait, clarify,
If
clarify. Yeah,
morality comes from the social organism, then what if somebody's antisocial? What if somebody's asocial? Then they don't fit into that morality. Thus, morality is not universal.
wait, give me an example of this. So what does an antisocial person look like? What does,
Um, Charles Manson.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
would say, well, most
If
people
Charles
think that his
Manson
actions are wrong.
if Charles Manson
So it's
thinks the
pretty
way
specific.
that he can help the world is by killing people and starting a race war, then he's not doing that necessarily out of evil. He's doing that because he thinks it's going to help the world, or at least his fucked up perception of the world.
Yeah, but the effects are still wrong. And also from a historical perspective, I don't
How are
think
they
that
wrong?
it
How are they wrong
completely.
or right?
I know, but now we're just going back to what it is. I feel like that's why we didn't really get to a fundamental answer, which is what I'm trying to explore. I mean, I'm asking, so what's good and what's bad in life? I mean, that's the first question that humans ever asked after we were smart enough. We became smart enough to think about it. And what I was saying earlier is that everything that we do is underlined by that specific question. You can never escape it. I mean, for instance, you and I, we're gonna do something tomorrow, presumably. We're probably
Mhm.
not going to just lie in bed. And if we were to just lie in bed and do nothing for the rest of our lives, I think many people would say that that's probably bad. It might not be evil, but it's definitely worse than the alternative. So we're all constantly operating on a notion of good and bad. I mean, you wouldn't want me to hurt people that you love and vice versa. So you can't really get
Yeah,
around this,
well,
even if you say that you're a
we
moral
live.
nihilist in the abstract. So I'm saying,
No,
so let's
well,
say
are you
that, no,
familiar with Rousseau? Jean-Jacques
yeah, I mean,
Rousseau, The
so are
Social
you gonna say that,
Contract?
yeah, are you gonna say that, what, society, I mean,
I'm
what's
going to
good for
say
them?
that good behavior leads to social cohesion, and we have good feelings about good behavior because, basically it leads to social cohesion. which leads to collective strength. Like this kind of gets back to like e pluribus unum, like the
Okay.
idea out of many we are one, right? So if we have a collective society that's all bound together by these notions of morality, and that can help us survive, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that morality is an actual thing instead of a social construct. Like a lot of things are social constructs, even though they graph onto something that's real, right? So shoes are a social construct because guess what? A shoe, it has a function, but it's not literally related to something else. Race is also a social construct. Like people say, Italians are not we're not white, and to be honest, I still think that. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. Those come from mental connections that we make, saying, okay, so this is this thing because it's similar to this thing enough, right? So basically, how do I explain this? Okay, so I have these two guitar picks right here, right? How are these the same thing? They're not. But my brain can more easily process them as two very similar things. Because that leads to, if my fucking brain needed to compute every fucking atom on this thing, then that would be insanely inefficient and I would probably just fucking go insane. I'm not a supercomputer, right? So I have to determine that these two things serve the same function. They're relatively similar. They are made out of, they're both made out of plastic, right? This one's more soft plastic and it's red. This one's hard plastic and it's black. This one has a grip. This one doesn't. They're a different shape. But at the end of the day, my brain is going to mostly process them as identical because why would it not? Even though they're not identical at all, they're made out of completely different atoms, right? So, where am I going with this?
You're talking about, so
So,
morality is a social construct, do you think?
yes, morality is a social construct in the same way that, you know, light bulbs are a social construct, in the same way that race is a social, gender is technically a social construct. Well, actually,
Yeah.
it's less of a social construct than race. It's actually probably the closest thing that we have to something that is not a social construct.
I mean, I think it's
Besides, like,
influenced by, but it's not determined by biology. It's probably more rooted in biology than race, though. I agree, yeah.
yeah, because it's it's literally a binary, right? There's no in between. You're either born. I mean,
Or
there's
sex, I
people with
mean.
there's intersex
Yeah.
people, but like that's a small minority, and most of those people still fit into one of these for the most part. So there's one or the other, and they're determined by chromosomes. So that's actually one of the things that is least of a social construct. Beds are a social construct. Everything is a fucking social construct, including especially morality, because the morality of like a Muslim civilization is completely different to the morality of a Christian civilization or a pagan civilization or a communist or a fascist or a libertarian civilization, right?
Yeah, but okay. No, but the problem is, so if I was to steel man or provide the strongest possible case for moral objectivism, which I actually do believe in 100%. I mean, I've thought about it deeply. I think it is objective. I'm a moral objectivist. I'm not quite a moral realist though, because I think we need a more sophisticated stance. So I'd call myself a moral meta realist. And I'm not quite a moral Platonist because I think Platonism has some flaws, even though he was actually groping towards the truth in some sense. I just think that he can fully access it. But what I'd say is the response. So from this point of view, from what we believe in basically as moral objectivists, we would say that, okay, so different civilizations may have had different conceptions of morality. What that really means, it doesn't disprove objective morality. It just means that our task is to actually determine which one was more right, which one was better, and probably support that faction by way of weighing their beliefs against an arbiter of truth in morality. So we have this criterion of morality that's independent of social convention, and we actually evaluate society through the lens of that objective criterion of morality. And if society deviates from that criterion, if it's too far away from it, that means that we should actually take the role of activists and change society. So for instance, why relativism has always failed in my eyes is that it ignores brute phenomenological facts about what it's like to be a conscious creature. For instance, for example, if you were to go back to Nazi Germany, Sam Harris makes a similar point. I like him on morality. I think he's a good writer on this topic. If you were to go back to Nazi Germany, well, obviously, I mean, I suppose some people, let's just presume that, let's suppose certain ethical values. You know what? Not even Nazi Germany. Let's just use an even less contested example. Let's just use ISIS. So if we look at ISIS, we see, I mean, brutal group. We see torturing people en masse, annihilating entire villages, decapitating people en masse, crucifying people, burning them on fire, killing people. These are mostly civilians. So they do all of this to civilians, mass rapes, probably some female genital mutilation, pretty much throw in every brutal behavior that you can imagine into a pot, and that's you have that group. So within those territories that they control, those ideas were hegemonic. They were sanctioned by the group. But that doesn't necessarily make them true. In fact, and it doesn't mean that people just stopped resisting because they realized,
Doesn't make it
oh,
wrong that
they're
most people thought it was
they're
wrong.
socially the dominant. That was actually what fueled activism and resistance. A similar case applies in Nazi Germany. In Nazi Germany, the Nazis took control of society and they reshaped it so as to promote certain ideas. Perhaps less impactfully because it's not as directly moral. It doesn't as directly relate to suffering. They said that certain types of art are degenerate art and other types of art are Aryan art, or this is Jewish physics and then this is a different Aryan science that's better, and so on and so forth. They had these divisions in the way that they thought about the products of human creativity. And then there was also the Holocaust, there were the racial laws, and even if you're a hardcore NS person, I think most people would probably disagree with at least the idea of the Holocaust, which is to annihilate a certain group of people through violence. I mean, I know you could say it's an uncharitable interpretation. There's some people who deny it happened. I think that they're
Here's
wrong
the
about
thing.
it. But the fact, so just because those ideas were socially sanctioned doesn't mean that people just say, oh, okay, yeah, we'll just accept it. That's what morality is now. No, people rebelled. And even within the aesthetic dimension, I want to hear your views on aesthetics as well. People just didn't agree with Nazi aesthetics. I mean, people like Arnold Schoenberg came along and said that, no, I mean, they're just wrong about this. And actually, that's why the Nazis hated Schoenberg and they hated 12-tone music, they hated serial music, they thought it was degenerate. But it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone just agreed and said, oh, I mean, this music is bad. I like a lot of that music. And on the more fundamental scale, because I think morality and aesthetics are almost the same, they're not completely the same, but they're heavily intertwined. You can't really separate them from each other. No, countless people disagree with those policies. That's why there was a resistance in Vichy France, resistance to the occupation. That's why they're partisan guerrillas, and that's why we have movies that glamorize those fighters. Movies like Inglourious Bastards that talk about the forces who tried to annihilate the Nazis. So I don't really see
Yeah.
how even from a practical empirical standpoint, most people act as if what you've said is not true. Most people don't just accept what society tells them, and that's literally why activism even exists. I mean, because if that was the case, Bernie wouldn't even be out there. Most leftist politicians wouldn't be out there. They just say, okay, well, society's like this, so that determines morality. No, I think morality comes first. You see what I'm saying? I don't get relativism. I
Yeah,
feel like it
well,
makes no
okay.
sense. Okay. Or there's all right. I think I understand what you're saying, but okay, there's a lot I could say about this, but because I think that we miss some of the fundamentals. But what about some of the other examples? Like, so you have the policies that preceded the Holocaust, Nazi racial laws, Kristallnacht, deportation of
Yeah.
certain groups, the policies about dividing society into the degenerate and the Aryan, the aesthetic views. What do you think about all of that? Because to most people it seems less high stakes because it doesn't as directly involve questions of suffering, violence. But I think that's actually where people's answers are most revealing. So what about that? I mean, how defensible is
Yeah,
all of it?
I would say most of that, if you think that's going to make the life of the people of the country better, then yeah, you should probably do that.
Okay, but
And the
what if it
opposite is
involves
true. If it was if you, Jordan, really thought that banning tonal music would increase the quality of life of the average American, then I would say that you should do that. Or at least I would say that if I was you and I had your same brain, then that's what I would do.
yeah, well, I don't I would never support a policy like that. But we,
No
we
more
can talk about
Bach.
aesthetics too. No, but okay. Huh. All right. No, but you
Bach
know what
is
the problem is
boring.
though? Because we arrive at this point because we were talking about morality, what it is, whether or not it exists outside of social convention. And you were saying that you could make an argument for all of these different scenarios being justified, even though it's harder to do that for ISIS, but doesn't that just prove my point? Because you're still falling back on morality. You're saying this is better than
No.
that.
Well,
I'm just trying to
morality is a
say what I was
thing.
trying to ask you is
Morality
where
is
it
a
comes
thing that we
from.
can comprehend, right? It's a
Yeah,
social construct. So
but can it still be objective though? I
no,
mean, how is it
because
not objective though?
because
If it's
if I'm
bro, we just
ISIS and you're not ISIS, then who's in if ISIS is true to me and ISIS is not true to you, then who's right?
what do you mean if ISIS is true?
If
Like
ISIS's
if the
ideology
ideas
is
are
true.
if the ideology is also good in a sense, it's correct, good.
Yeah.
Okay. And if trying to realize that ideology in the real world through the methods that they used is good. So you
Yeah.
have someone who thinks that it's good, basically. So an actual
Mhm.
jihadist. So you're saying
Yeah.
you have a jihadist and someone who's not a jihadist.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, again, the entire idea behind moral objectivism is that we can have external arbiters who realize that one is better than the other because that's just how we move through life. I mean, so
Mhm.
do you think the entirety of the fact that conflict exists in society and has for a very long time means that we should just be in a deadlock all the time? We should never move forward. So, for instance, you have people who think that we should abolish ICE, and then people who think that ICE should actually stay. So what
Yeah.
happens if what you're saying is true? We just don't really do anything. We just sit down, let them kill each other, or do we see which one's right
No,
and try
well,
to? I don't
well,
get
what
it.
we do, what
Practically,
we
what
do
does this mean
is
on a practical level?
okay. So if I'm a jihadist and you're a jihadist, here's the thing. I'm going to try to achieve jihad. You're trying to avoid jihad and trying to stop me from being a jihadist, right? Fundamentally, material things are the only things that we can determine I mean, like things that happened in terms of material are the only things that we can determine epistemologically, right? And those things have no bearing, I think, on what is good or what is bad. There's no way you can determine that, right?
No, see, I think
So,
that's where this messes up. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, I think
okay.
that's where it feels.
So do you think so how does that manifest materially? How do things that are good or bad manifest
Okay,
materially? Like the
earlier I was going
hormones in
to
people's
reference
brains.
a book that I really like. There's an author nowadays who I think is great about this. He was also a member of the New Atheists. And I was going to bring up the New Atheists as well because I used to be a diehard member of that entire intellectual sect. And I thought that they were completely right about religion being this organized religion being a source of great evil in society. My views have actually changed quite significantly. They've matured. What I think about God, theology has changed over time, his existence, and so on and so forth. But I think the fundamental impulse to use reason to better the world and to better our state is actually correct and it's valuable. So what I'd say is if you read Sam Harris, he has a book that I love. It's called The Moral Landscape because how science can determine human values. And he was
Hmm.
saying that first of all, this topic is supremely important for him. I think he's right to regard it as maximally important because it's fundamental. It underlies everything that we do. And so he's decided to approach it in the most logically rigorous manner. And in that book, he says for centuries and centuries, we've been debating moral questions. Pretty much everything that we debate about is a moral question. When we're in politics and we're deciding as to which policy we should pass, which candidate's better than the other, we're talking about a moral question. When we're in the world of art and aesthetics, when we're talking about which one is better than the other, if we based on some form of pleasure or goodness, again, we're just falling back on morality. So it always goes back to morality, which means he says that means that you have to dissect it like a logician and think about it as surgically as possible. And he says the greatest source of confusion that's plagued moral thought and thinking about morality for so long is the idea that you can never arrive at, be it as a result of metaphysical limitations or some other problem, maybe an inbuilt cognitive limitation that we humans suffer from. You can never arrive at facts about morality through either observations of the world or through logical reasoning. And he said in that book, which I agree with, I mean, I have my own stance that I fleshed out over years, but I think he provides the skeleton argument very nicely. He says that no, he thinks that moral statements are actually facts. They're not just short-term feelings, they're not just expressions of emotion. So he's not an emotivist. He says they're facts, and the facts actually are based on phenomena that are happening in the world around us. So what he does is he says, okay, moral claims are facts about the well-being of conscious or no, he says sentient beings, sentient creatures in the world. And because we know with a very high degree of certainty that has been that is based on observations that have been verified time and time again over the course of life, because we know what tends to bring about well-being as well as the antithesis of well-being, we can actually use basically scientific thinking, observations of the world around us to objectively determine what's better than something else and what's good and what's bad. Because they all go back to claims about the well-being of conscious beings. And so if you can look at what impacts the well-being of a conscious being, which is why he thinks vegetarianism could be valuable as well, you can determine as to what it is, okay, what is it that produces negative experiences or that a lack of well-being, what it is that produces well-being. We should probably prefer the latter over the former. And that's why I think he says that it's the most elegant solution to all of these problems, and it's not really as complicated as people make it out to be. So he thinks that you can actually arrive at it through logical thinking and through observations of the world around us. I think he's basically right about that. I mean, you should check out that book, The Moral Landscape. I think it's really smart.
I mean, I'll check it out, but my question is, why does basically why does the well-being of something
Oh.
determine if it's good or bad?
Because he thinks that those terms have no meaning outside of the. I mean, he should have responded to this more
Yeah,
clearly.
I don't think
All
good
that he
and
says
bad
is
are a thing.
all he says is that the question itself is somewhat misleading. But what I would say is, okay, you can't define those terms in terms that are simpler than themselves. And this actually relates to the most fundamental question of metaphysics that could even exist. It relates to questions about God and theology, which is like, okay, what's actually out there and what's most fundamental in existence? And I'd say that whenever you talk about, for instance, okay, you say 1 + 1 = 2. Well, why is that the case? How is that the case? Why doesn't it equal 3? And so on and so forth. And then you would answer that by saying, okay, well, 1 is equal to itself. So if I add an entity that's equal to itself, I have 2 entities. So that's a logicist approach. But then from there, and that's what logicians in the 20th century tried to do, like Bertrand Russell, Whitehead, that's what they were obsessed with. Frege, all of these people, major term in philosophy of math. But then someone asked me, okay, how do you know that 1 is equal to itself? How do I know that A is equal to itself, that A equals A and doesn't equal B, or that any entity is equal to itself? You say, okay, well, at that point, the why question is just brushing up against meta logic. That's just the way that it is. It's a precondition, it's a fact that we have to accept. Do you understand what I'm saying? It doesn't really make sense to question it. It's a transcendental. And then some people would say that's actually the proof of God, because they'd say God is actually the ground of those transcendent facts, like the laws of logic, math, and so on and so forth. So we can say that they hold true in part because they're reflecting a deeper meta level truth. And so when it comes to morality that you can't really question, you have to presuppose it. It's the base upon which everything stands. So there's a paradox called the problem of infinite regress, and it's connected to all of this: morality, logic, epistemology, math, everything. So basically how it goes is, so someone tells someone else to do something or that they shouldn't do something. That person asks them why. And then they say, okay, because of X reason. Then someone says why X, and then they say because of Y, and then so on and so forth until you have an infinite regress. So the paradox is, okay, how can we be sure as to the reason for anything in life, as to why we should do anything, if you can never actually answer on a fundamental level, because each justification can be countered by an additional question. And so what I say is, rather than being the death sentence of thought, that just means that there's this fundamental groundwork level of being that underlies everything that we have to presuppose and take as a given. That's it. And so when you ask, oh, why does well-being determine good and bad? Because we know that it feels good to feel good and it feels bad to feel bad. And those are just the fundamental facts. I mean, you could say that it's circular, but I would say it's actually above the circular. It's more fundamental than everything else. It's a transcendental. Those are the transcendentals. And that's exactly what Plato talked about. He said if you group them all together, you have the theory of the realm of forms. And I'm not really a Platonist, but I like what he was trying to do there. So that's how it answered that. That's how and why it determines it. Because you can't define those terms in terms that are simpler than themselves. You get what I'm saying? It sounds kind of complicated, but it's just meta.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but
yeah, you just have to accept it.
I think a better way of understanding these things is ultimately through well, infinite regress is something that challenges our presuppositions about
Yeah,
things.
I just
But
think that it has an explanation.
saying that it challenges those things doesn't prove the problem of infinite regress to be incorrect uh, or anything. It's kind of like infinite regress, I think, is an actual argument, but it doesn't. People don't like how it feels, right? Because it's pretty much infinite regress will lead to nihilism, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think you can dispute infinite regress. So I think
But what do you mean by that?
nihilism, I think
Well,
nihilism
what do you
makes
think
more
about it? I
sense.
mean, what does it even show in the first place?
Well, if everything has a reason, right, then and you keep asking, then yeah, you're going to get on some fundamentals like physics. I think physics, to be honest, is the only thing that is really fundamental because everything is downstream from physics. So you have physics and then
But what about metaphysics?
chemistry, huh?
Metaphysics.
I don't
Are you
think
just anti?
I kind of think
You know, because
metaphysics
you
are
brought
a
up
great.
Wittgenstein, because Wittgenstein actually almost rejected it in some sense.
Yes, I reject
Yeah.
metaphysics in a weird way. I think metaphysics are a good
A
way
cope.
of yeah, I think they're cope, but I also think that cope is not entirely a bad thing because ultimately under the infinite regress idea, the closest thing that you can have to a meaning to life is reproduction. And if cope helps you get into a better place where you can actually, accomplish the meaning of life, then cope might be a good thing. But that doesn't mean that cope is real. Like that doesn't mean that copes are true
Right.
just because they help us. That's why I'm no longer a Christian, right?
Fuck. Oh, so you left it behind. Well, no, but I would say, but I do think there's an explanation for infinite regress. That's actually pretty not neat, and I think Plato was trying to get at it, but we have better arguments nowadays. So I just think that's basically proof of God. I think God's just the groundwork of being, and that he's where truth comes from, and we just probably can't comprehend all of it. So, for instance, it seems like our minds breaks down somewhat when we ask ourselves, well, how do you know that A equals A? I mean, you know about formal logic and all of that. So basically, A
Yeah.
is just anything. So A isn't, it's just a stand-in symbol for anything that exists. So if I have this
Mhm.
cup, I just randomly pick this. Most of us would presuppose that this cup is the cup. It's like a
Mhm.
linguistic property that you can't really go beyond, basically. So this
Yeah.
cup is equal to itself. And yeah, you could ask, well, how do you know that that's the case? And I think the fact that you can't really go beyond it, it just seems like we can't comprehend that. It's a starting point of thought, is proof that it's held up by a transcendent being. But I mean, we don't really need to go into that. So I think metaphysics is valid, but it's also what Kant was talking about too, with transcendental idealism, space-time causality. He was saying we can't really be totally, it seems like they structure our existence or the preconditions of our existence. And I think that applies to many domains. But to go back to, because we're talking about well-being, morality, right? So how I think it's related is I think that's just what it boils down to. That's what, because you ask why does it determine it? Because it almost has to, just by way of logical necessity, because otherwise those terms just don't even make sense. I mean, and they're human term. So they have a definition, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I
Because
think
what if let's think
well-being
about it
and
like this. So
non-well-being do have
what if you
objective.
tried to define good and bad? I mean, or what if we just ask people what's good and what's bad, and then we keep asking it? Like,
Yeah,
what do you think would
well,
happen?
I think what would happen is people would say, well, that's good or that's bad. And then they would say, why? And then they would say, basic, they would be like basic human decency. And then why?
Yeah, but
And
what I
then they
think
would
is
have no
basic.
real reason behind it
Yeah,
because
because they're NPCs and shit.
this is like liberal morality. They're like, just basic human empathy. And it's like, why is basic human empathy a good thing?
I know, but what I just think that that's because they're probably sub 100 IQ and they haven't really thought about it deeply enough. But if you gave them the same argument to defend, think about like a lawyer, right? If
Hmm.
you're below a certain verbal IQ, you probably, and I'm not one of these Jared Taylor into IQ determinist type of motherfuckers, you know what I'm saying? I don't think that determines everything. Or Steve Saylor, one of those types of guys.
Yeah.
even though I do think maybe race and IQ is we don't need to get into that right now. It's not really
They're
relevant.
getting at something that's true.
Yeah, I think IQ is
So-
important, and that it's just a taboo topic because people don't like to admit that there could be these natural differences. It does,
Yeah.
or differences that are at least partly natural, but I do think it explains a lot. I don't think it's a set in stone. I think you can influence it through behavior. But what I'd say is
Yeah.
the brutal truth. That's also a grindcore band, but anyways, the brutal truth that people want to ignore nowadays, bro, is that honestly, there are certain professions that basically exclude people who are below a certain IQ. You can't really make it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's not explicitly written down, but if you're just pretty much an absolute gorilla when it comes to verbal IQ, you can't really talk or speak well, you just won't really make it in law school. I mean, the LSAT is literally just a test of logic and verbal reasoning. So what I would say is the people that you're thinking of are basically like those gorillas. I mean, they have the tools. They don't even have the tools. But if you give someone the same set of assignments with better tools, with better machinery, they could provide you with a better reason or a better justification. So let's say that you ask this person, okay, why is this good? Why is this bad? And yeah, they're using that standard liberal morality, which expresses itself as, oh, we have to respect basic human empathy, bro. Just be a good person, bro. An effing good chunkin dogger and shit like that. You know, they wouldn't go deeper than that, but doesn't mean that you can't go deeper, generally speaking. And if you took a smarter person, they'd keep drilling it down. And they'd probably just arrive at what I said, which is okay, infinite regress is solved by appeal to fundamental facts that can't be questioned. So if you keep asking, okay, why is it good? Why is it good? I would just say it just goes back to perception, to phenomenology. I think that's where it comes down to. That's what Sam Harris says. Because no, think about it like this, dude. So they say human decency, but is that really fundamental? You know what I'm saying? It's probably not fundamental for them. There's a more fundamental consideration that they're just not expressing through language. That's basically what I'm saying. I mean, but what if someone asked you what's good and what's bad? Both in general terms and with respect to specific scenarios. So almost as if it's a moral poll, basically a moral social experiment. So they give you two different scenarios, and they ask you, okay, which one's good, which one is bad, or which one's better than the other. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, give me an example.
Okay, cool. Whatever. Thank you everyone for watching. Bye bye.